All right. It is Friday night. That means it's time for another edition of All Politics, All Local, America's number one hip hop and talk radio show, coming right at you every Friday night, live on Facebook, live on YouTube, straight out of Rutgers, Newark.
Now
I'm
we
Zaid Muhammad with my comrade and our founding producer, uh, Jonathan Austin, to start the night off. We have a full night. Going to talk about a very heavy anniversary that this country just observed yesterday, and that is the anniversary of the insurrection that took place at the Capitol on January 6th last year. An incredible sight, no matter where you come out on the political spectrum, for all to behold and address. And it certainly is raising some very serious questions about the very stability of these United States at this very critical crossroads hour. We have several guests. We'll have two segments devoted to the topic. Our first segment will feature none other than I'm going to call her a survivor.
mm,
It's a language I'm going to use very pointedly, and I'll let her
right.
clarify that she sees fit. A survivor of that insurrection, none other than Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, a highly respected uh, black leader, black legislator, clear, outspoken voice about what's right and just that should be raised in the U.S. Congress that we're very proud of. And she's just popping in now. Good to see you, Madam Congresswoman. I'm bigging you up as you're coming in. Yeah, right.
Thank you. Thank you
Yes.
for having me. Good evening.
Good
Yes.
evening.
And,
Good evening. And
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 as
right
she comes
after
in, as she comes in, and we'll have a second segment with some local voices, more local to the area than our esteemed Congresswoman in Lawrence Hamm and Sue Altman. Sue just did a very powerful rally addressing the dimensions and the implications and the importance of responding to what January 6th was about just yesterday in South Orange. That was very well attended and had a very vibrant character that was necessary, I would say, for the time. Um, Madam Congresswoman, I introduce you this way, and I want you to hear what I'm saying. Right? I introduce you as a
a
survivor
survivor.
of January 6th. And I pointedly use that language because what happened, what the country witnessed on January 6th was not just an attack on a space, but they literally were coming after you and your comrade, you and your colleagues. They were coming after y'all, right? And in addition to that, you endured the danger also of the residual medical challenges of some of our somewhat conservative, extreme colleagues on the right, and wound up getting sick with COVID. And were
Mm.
very worried about you. Now we kind of bumped into each other on Facebook as I raised this on Facebook, and I'm glad we're having this follow up and that you're with us in this space. So I
Thank
wanted to
you.
welcome you to All Politics are Local. I believe this is your first time on with us, and we're honored to have you.
Very much.
Your
Thank
colleague
you.
from our area has his own segment. He'll be with us at the 8 p.m. hour. So it's this it's a loaded show. And we're glad to have you in the space. So take a breath and let's look back from your eyes, your experience, right? Your concerns, right? Your wisdom about what happened last year. Tell us from your vantage point just what happened on January 6th that everybody in this state that we call Jersey, that we call home, and in this country that we call this country that we live in, our country, what should we be looking at and taking away from that incredible incident that was January 6th last year?
I think the most striking thing that we need to recognize, address, and stay vigilant about is that democracy is is dynamic, and that it was threatened on January 6th of last year. Um,
I think she may have frozen. I think Congresswoman's line may have frozen. Um, Jonathan, you're on mute. Uh, So we'll give her a chance to for that glitch to straighten out. I know she's got her communications person with her, so we'll give them a chance to straighten that out. Jonathan, you muted. You wanted to say something. Go ahead. You were muted.
I was going to say, in the meantime, what we could do is, just, I mean, when we saw what we saw last year, I was worried about all the people who were in Congress, and many of us thought that they were actually in physical danger, and it turned out that they were right. We thought that I literally thought that some members of Congress could potentially die that day, and because of the way in which people were coming in, the extreme nature of the mob, and it was really about, like, can they escape in time, right? Like, can the members of Congress actually escape in time to live?
It's incredible. What a question.
But and I don't think people really get, like, how close our country came to being undermined in devastating permanent ways, like democracy coming, like what democracy that we have, right? That started in like 1965 with the Voting Rights Act. How close the imperfect democracy we have came to actually breaking, because if they had gotten to Congress people, if they had hung Mike Pence as they were chanting and saying, and as they were going through the corridors and they set up a noose, right? Like, had they actually gotten a hold of Congress people and senators, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know if there was going to be a declaration of martial law. The way that the Republicans are talking, some Republicans are talking about it now. They're like, it was part of an orchestrated effort to really undermine the elections and try to put it back in a way so that technically they were going to try to have a technicality so Trump could be reinstalled in office, even though he lost the election. Like, I don't know how many people would have died in the weeks and months following, because it would have been horrible if it had actually happened in that way. I think I think what's scary about that isn't just what's going on in terms of that day, but what scares me is that when I'm turning on mainstream news, when I'm looking at what's supposed to be going on, when people are talking about, like, the end of American democracy, they're usually in books written by academics, and you have to read those books. You usually don't hear that on mainstream press. But all mainstream newspapers, right, like mainstream journalists, are seriously contemplating the actual end of, like, democracy, and have been for some time, because the plausible end game can be seen objectively. Like, if that had happened, if Trump and the people who supported him had gotten their way and they did not certify the election, that would have been not just bad, that would have been absolutely devastating.
Ed just popped in. Our founding producer, the great Ed Riley, has just popped in and joined us. We were just having Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman on. They're having some tech issues that she's going to pop back on as soon as they get resolved. But Jonathan and I were just doing some more layering of the discussion, of the topic of what this January 6th actually really means when you popped in.
Yeah, it's kind of like that we're not quite sure if people just understand, like, where we are right now, because it's kind of like people are walking around and people are having conversations, and I'm like, do you know how close we are to, like, we always say it in America, like, it's give me liberty or give me death, right? We talk about how, if it's the ballot or the bullet, right? We talk about how democracies are like, or functioning democracy is an alternative to absolute violence. I don't know what would have happened if Trump had succeeded that day. They had taken some members of Congress hostage. They did not certify the vote. He declared martial law or kicked it back to states, or people in the states, right? Had cheated in the way that Trump said, and just made, like, Philadelphia's votes disappear. or part of Atlanta's votes disappear. What is being proposed openly, like above ground, is some of the most dangerous stuff that I've heard be openly proposed, probably in my lifetime, when it comes to the fundamental, like like Baba Zaid, you and I, we criticize American democracy all the time. There's tons of criticisms of what is good, what is bad, who is left out, right? The amount of racism or anti-Blackness, the amount of exclusion. But when you're looking at this, what's going on right now, the level of violence or mayhem that is potentially right there, right? That we don't really, I don't know if we appreciate it, right? I don't know if we appreciate all the things that would be lost, like things we take for granted, like going to school, like certain things, like being able to
vote,
right? Like everything that we're talking about in terms of how we live our lives gets broken, gets destroyed. People's lives, all that other stuff gets destroyed. So I don't know. Do you think people are understanding the like what 1/6 and all the aftermath?
I'm gonna tell you. I don't think people do understand, right? And what we're talking about, and I want to be wrong. There are times when you want to be wrong, right? But you hear me and some like me often raise this question of fascism, right? You saw on January 6th a frontal attack on what could have been the emergence of fascism American style, right? That's what's at stake. These are folks who had an agenda to create and establish, and they're still organized, right? White minority rule, right? Even though white folks are, quote, the majority of the population, this is a minority segment of the population trying to make things so limiting, to use a mild word, that democracy in the pluralistic sense, meaning that the majority rules, does not matter, right? They're going to maintain white privilege at a level and in a way that disregards a whole lot of what you would ordinarily associate with democracy, even if it means, using state force, right? State force to make that happen. The real question about January 6th that I want to ask is, where was the state presence to hold back that mass force that was coming at them? So this is there's so many dimensions to this thing. And we have Madam Congresswoman back. So let me just back up and bring it, let her come back to what she was trying to lay out for us with her own listening eyes.
So I think you were just asking me what's most striking to me today.
Right.
And I answered that I think it's that our democracy was fragile and it was threatened. And what's troubling to me today is that it is still threatened. That we're living in a very dangerous environment where people are still plotting to undo the rule of law. They're plotting on state levels to disenfranchise people and to mess with the infrastructure of elections so that they can do whoever they want to undo and get elected anyone that they want to get elected. That this is a real test for us, and it's scary and it's real.
Now, during that time on 1/6, you were with both Democrats and Republicans. What was their reaction in the room in real time, and how does that contrast with what you saw weeks later?
So they weren't really saying much of anything. They were sort of clustered among themselves, and we were kind of clustered among ourselves. And the only interaction that I actually saw was when Lisa Blunt Rochester was trying to get them to mask up, and they would decline her very generous offer. So there really wasn't any, camaraderie, or we're in this together, or this is frightening, or this is terrible. Are you okay? We'll be okay kind of thing. There was not that at all in that room.
So even in the room when actually Republicans were in danger too, right? Like it seems like if the mob had caught certain Republicans, including like Vice President, other members of Congress, it wouldn't have worked so well either. You're saying that they were very distant. They weren't wearing their masks. They were being belligerent. That was your experience?
They were just clustered among themselves and not interacting with us. I can't say they were belligerent, but they were defiant and not wearing their masks and disrespectful to the rest of us and not wearing their masks.
So you wound up both of them getting sick.
I did. A couple of days later, the attending physician's office called and said, you need to go get yourself tested because you've been exposed. And I did, and I was positive. So they made arrangements for me to get monoclonal antibodies infusion. Luckily, I'd had my first shot a couple of weeks before. And the doctor told me it was the combination of monoclonal antibodies and the fact that I'd gotten the first shot that probably saved my life.
So are we talking then about, since there's still this hesitation in this country with Republicans, A, not wanting to get vaccinated and B, not wanting to wear masks, are we talking about these folks still running around the country infecting people and causing these different variances to take place?
Well, I think they find that the unvaccinated are those that are causing us to sort of be in this spiral here. I think that some of our colleagues on the Republican side are going around perpetrating the big lie about who won the election, the big lie about being masked, the big lie about mandates and liberties being disrupted because of the mandate to be masked. At the same time, they themselves on many occasions are already vaccinated. And so I think that they're perpetuating a very dangerous lie to their constituents.
Right. That was a conversation I had earlier this week with some folks, and I was talking to a young lady who works for TD Bank, and she told me she was a Republican and she was staunchly against it. And I said, well, do you know that Donald Trump and his entire family has been vaccinated? And she said, no, that's not true. And I'm like, and we're talking about a young woman. We're not talking about an older woman. We're talking about a young woman who works at TD Bank. And she told me that that just isn't true. Don't believe nothing you hear from this government. I was like,
well,
wow.
Donald Trump said he was vaccinated and
He
boosted.
sure did.
So I mean, it's
sure
not
did.
like he's getting it third hand, but this willingness to accept this misinformation that is harmful, that they see that is harmful. They see people dying that didn't need to be dying from this. It just baffles my mind. How can you see it for yourself and then deny it? It's very cultish. It's scary.
When Congressman Donald Payne was alive, and he used to come on the show back in the day. One of the things Donald Payne Sr. would tell us is he would always come back and he would say, these people are crazy, and I just couldn't believe that there were people in the Congress that were that naive. Right. And just like, wait a minute, we're talking. And most of these people are elders, right, that are in the Congress. And that's what I find hard to believe. I'm like, why would they want to perpetuate this lie to the very young people who are going to assume this country? Why would they want to do that?
These people that you're talking about, they're not crazy. They're demented. They're evil. And they're cowards. They fear this subpar intellectual man who won an election unbelievably. He won that election, who served this country dishonorably, who made us hated around the world, and divided us as a nation within a nation, and then didn't protect us when the doggone coronavirus hit us and tried to make us, and on top of that told us, maybe we could like drink bleach or something, So it is hard for me to understand how anybody can follow someone like him. I said to somebody,
73 million people voted for this fool.
I know.
Use me so blunt, but 73 million people voted for him, and it wasn't 12 people running trying to bum rush the Capitol. It was a whole sea of some folks who were quite possessed with anything but good sense on that day.
You know, because I was inside the Capitol and I couldn't see all that was going on, even in the Capitol. I could see in one room that we were in for a little while on the little television, some of the stuff that was outside was going on. I could hear inside the chants, USA, USA. I heard the tussling and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, man, I know these people, they're encountering the Capitol Police are going to take them down. I had no idea. I had no idea how outnumbered, how dangerous it was for the Capitol Police and for anybody else that was in that Capitol, for our staff members who were scared. I had a staff member who started. That was his first day.
Wow.
And he no longer works for me on the Hill, and I don't know to what extent that played a part in his moving on to something entirely different. But I'll tell you, that was a frightening experience when you look at it now. And even though I didn't know all that was going on at the time, I've had to relive it over and over and over again because all the news media keep, showing it.
Right.
And when I see it, it's incredible. It's unbelievable. They look like colored ants. The grounds of the Capitol were just inundated with so many people, and they were just like this. That was just frightening. Just really, it's harrowing even to this day.
And you know, Congresswoman, I'm gonna tell you something else on the other end of that. You know, they may have been hoping for some kind of race war, because I got to tell you, if members of the Congressional Black Caucus, some of those members, you all being there, had been murdered by these people, and maybe they were hoping that, because we've said this to Congressman Payne, I mean, that could have easily turned into total chaos in this country, right? By those folks going in there and disrupting democracy the way they did. And remember, we still got people in our hood, in our community, don't give a damn about no democracy, right? You remember when they killed Dr. King, they were ready to tear this country up. And maybe that's what these folks were hoping for. And I think
there's evidence that back the theory, Ed. There one reporter, and I can't recall his name. There has been some memo conversation between some of Trump's leadership and military leadership, is that they were hoping for an Antifa presence, and that there would be a clash between Antifa present folks and the Trump folks, and that would be used as the excuse to roll the military out to crush Antifa and take control of the Congress and the Capitol, and use that to in very modest language, delay the certification of the election. That was one of the plans that's on the table, and that's just preliminary stuff that's coming out in the investigations.
For a question for the Congressman?
I was just going to say that the January 6th committee, the select committee, is really gathering intelligence and what went down, who's involved, at what point they were involved, how was collaboration pursued, how was this plan, who paid for this, all of that stuff. I don't know that they were hoping that Antifa would show up. I know that they were hoping to try to blame it, that there was Antifa influence there, and that you saw Republican Congress members trying to inject that into the narrative from the giddy up. But it didn't get that far because it didn't look like Antifa out there.
Right.
It looked like the 3%ers, the Oath Keepers, the Ku Klux Klan without their hoods on. That's what it looked like. And you're absolutely right. Had they encountered Black members of Congress, members of the CBC, we don't know what would have happened. That's because these are the these are the people that have no respect for our race, our dignity, our respect, and our liberty and justice for all. They're not; those are not the people that were there.
And it's our vote that they were coming for. That's what this is all about.
Right.
I mean, we saw this. We saw this white folks white folks exploding on each other, but they were coming after the voting right and the voting capacity and the voting legitimacy of our people.
Well, they were coming after the legitimacy for certain. They were coming after trying to persuade the vice president to use power he didn't have to not to certify the election so that they could put it in the hands of the House of Representatives, where each state representative would have had one vote, and there would have been 3 or 4 more votes on the Republican side. So clearly, they were coming after the election and the certification process. We were inconsequential to them at that moment. I think, if they encountered us, they would have knocked us to the ground and gone on about their business. What they are doing now, state by state by state by state, and trying to shut down our access to the vote, making it more difficult for people to vote, that's what they're doing to try to disenfranchise us. That's what they're doing to try to take away our power. That's the frustration that I have, that my people aren't responding to it the way I want to see them respond to it.
Right.
And what way do you want that? What way do you want people to respond to it, and why? Right? Like, I think that goes to the heart of a lot of this. What do you think people are not responding to? What do they not see? And how should they respond?
I think first and foremost, they've got to be engaged. They've got to vote. They've got to register to vote. They got to talk to everybody they know and get them to register to vote. You got to participate in the system that's going to protect and preserve our democracy if you want to have it. And so you got to organize, and you got to organize and support people who you're going to advance to hold an elective office, but you're going to hold them accountable. That they're going to go and take that position, whatever it is, from the school board, which is a very interesting place right now, all the way up to the U.S. Senate, and even the president, that's going to speak to your issues and promise to address your concerns and respect who you are and your needs. And so, to me, that is that, and it needs to be done with a sense of urgency. And so, I see a little bit of the urgency here, a little bit of urgency there. I just need to know that we're talking in every one of our communities, that we're having these conversations, and that people, everyday people who are at the lowest end of the economic spectrum, that we should be helping and lifting them up to those at the very highest end that, make millions of dollars but still look like us, know that we're in this together and that we got to do it for one another.
So do you think that our communities are facing, based on a deliberate attempt to disenfranchise us, an existential threat in state after state, where they're literally trying to make our vote disappear? That you don't think that's hyperbole or anything? You think that is happening? That is what's going on right now? And
let me add to your question, Jonathan. Right?
But let me just say yes to that.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. Yes. Intentional. And if Congress doesn't pass voting protection laws, we are in big trouble.
Here's what I'm raising, right? What if, 22 we're here, right? This is a crossroads year for the Congress. It's an important year in state house elections, right? And we've got these laws that we have to fight through and organize around, right? And what I'm concerned with, and which could potentially happen, is if these folks, in their unfettered, brazen disregard for trying to disenfranchise our folks, and what if we saw a multiplication in some of these various states of what happened on January 6th? That's what I'm talking about. Right? What if we saw real clashes between real people over our right to vote okay, in these states where these new laws have been put in place, and where the force of law, by virtue of these new laws, no matter how morally wrong they are, right, is on their side, right? How many casualties will our community face in the face of something like that, right? Well, I mean, there's this. That's the kind of stuff that I'm concerned about. But more than that, at the same time, I want to be optimistic, because you're coming from the lane of struggle and organizing that I do. Even though you're clear in what you're trying to assess, and when you're dealing with things when they're most difficult, you still have to be optimistic. I am very proud of what I saw in Georgia with young elected Black women daring to confront their governor and even facing arrest. I'm proud of young people like my son, the general, and Tamika Mallory, and Until Freedom, going down there and helping folks on the ground mobilize the Black vote for those two new senators, right? They out-organized that. I'm proud of what Stacey Abrams did, big picturing the whole question of ballot access, no matter the fact that she came out the loser in that first run that she should have won, right? And is now geared up to out-organize that same construct right there in Georgia. I'm proud of the squad growing. It's not just 3 or 4 women now. It's a few folks now in Congress that are daring to push from the left. Right, I'm happy to see, for all of his limitations, Beto O'Rourke, a progressive voice in Texas, running for So there's some things that we got to build on and seize, and trying to push this thing forward. Madam Congressman, I definitely want to hear your feedback on some of that.
Okay, so with regard to the Stacey Abrams and the Beto O'Rourke's and other folks who are and protecting Warnock and even Kelly. Right. In this new in 2022, we need to be ensuring that we're having conversations with our friends and our compatriots in these other states to see how we can be helpful. We can be helpful in a number of ways. We can be helpful because we can go down there and give them some time. We can give them a couple of dollars. If everybody gave the candidates that we support a couple of dollars, if everybody did, that is concerned about the outcome of these elections, they would have the money they need to run in these elections. We could, help them to organize. What I did in 4 years ago, actually 2 years ago, I did a Blue Wave headquarters. And so even though I was running, I provided call time and things for candidates in other districts that were less blue and in other states that were less blue. I tried to lend our support. I think we got to recognize that there's this connection that we share from state to state, south to north, east to west, and that we need to be connected, and we need to be willing to show up when we need to, where we need to. And we need to recognize that our forefathers, they were optimistic. If they weren't optimistic, they would have given up and we wouldn't have the right to vote right now.
That's right.
But they were optimistic. They fought for us. They died for us. And it is our responsibility to honor that sacrifice and do everything we can. This government will not be defeated if we all stick together. And we're not just Black folks sticking together. We got white folks who are sticking together with us. We got Latinos, and we've got South Asians, and we've got the indigenous people. There are more people that share the need to protect this democracy than there are those who choose to dismantle it. And we need to be we need to be in alliance with one another.
Right.
Ed,
what would what language would Amiri Baraka be using for us if he was with us right now, brother? What would he be saying? What are those 2 famous words he would be raising right now that speaks to what you just said?
Unity without uniformity, brother.
The united front.
Oh yeah, united front.
United front.
But here's the thing, though, man. Congresswoman, our problem is that so many of our people have such low information, right? All of the things you just said, is right on point when you talk about, us registering to vote. us participating in elections. I mean, that's why we do this show, right? We've been doing it for over 10 years. You know, we say all politics are local because we understand, you know, what it really means in order for us to keep somebody like Mayor Baraka in office and keep certain people around him. But we also understand what it means to keep a certain governor in place, right? You know, and what it means to go national. We understand that. But we have this low level of information. We've got to start being able to educate young people to understand all those things you just said, what our forefathers paid for in terms of us, you know, having the right to vote and all that they put on the line for us. And so we can't get to this point now and then all of a sudden become apathetic about not being willing to vote because we see that these other people are not doing that.
You know, if I have a dream for New Jersey, I just want to talk about New Jersey for a minute.
I'm glad you're going
I've
there.
talked to my daddy and Congressman Payne and some other folks were very much involved in creating this Black Americans in New Jersey. This where we came together from all over the state of New Jersey. We had periodic meetings. I think we need a summit. I think we need a Black Agenda Summit. And I've talked to a couple of people about it. One of the problems that we have is who's going to be in charge. I personally don't care who's in charge. I just want us all to get together because we come from different perspectives. We come from different locations in the state. We have different ideas and we have different issues. What I know is bottom line is that who Republicans are right now, it would scare the heck out of me to have them lead me on any level. And we need to be fortifying what we expect from whatever party we're going to support and be able to speak with a unified voice. So here's our issues. Our issues are not only second chance reentry, but reduction of incarceration as a means of responding to infractions. We got to talk about education, not K through 12, but K through wherever you want to go and be able to afford and be encouraged. We need to talk about law enforcement that is embracive, that deals with our mental health issues in our community as well as the crime in our community and looks like us, is a reflection of us. We need to talk about making sure that there are people on school boards and planning boards and other boards that look like us or at least speak to our issues. So we need to come together and we need to talk about what are our 5, 6, 7 priorities. How do we accomplish them? They're not all electoral, but they're about lifting up our communities and ensuring that our communities have the same opportunities to thrive, not to just survive, but to doggone thrive, to be able to raise their children, to live in safe communities, live in decent housing, and be able to go to work every day and feel the dignity of being able to take care of you and your family.
Now, I'm glad you raised the question of being local to New Jersey, because one of the things that I wanted to build on your thoughts, right? And looking at our last election, right? We had a governor who just barely won, right? And ground was lost by the party in the southern part of the state, right? And there are a whole lot of our folks in the southern part of the state, although our more concentrated voice bases are central to North Jersey centers, right? But how can we organize an infusion of younger progressive talent to increase our presence in the more red parts of the state? I was trying to get Andy Kim to come on with you also, right? Andy Kim is a bright, vibrant new face in Congress, right? But won a tight election in an area that is more associated with the other side's perspective, right? And that's that base needs to be shored up, you know. So this is there's our folks. What's our progressive agenda, right? And how do we build a broader progressive agenda? And that's kind of what's going to dominate our next conversation, because I got a young man, I got an old man, and I got a young woman.
Make sure we let her.
I know you got Larry Hamm coming on. I know you, and I know you got Sue Altman. and they're
Yes.
two of the best organizers
Yes,
I've
they
ever
are,
seen.
both of them.
And I love working with them. And I think that they see the big picture,
Right.
and they see our need to come together around an agenda that works for our families, for our communities. And like, I respect them. I really follow them. And I think you're going to have a wonderful session with them. But I'd love to work with you. And I'd love to work with anybody who is ready, willing, and able to come together around setting an agenda and an expectations for our community.
I want to piggyback on something as I brought up before, but it just we never really developed it. You were talking about what scares you. You were talking about what the potential danger is. And if I'm hearing correctly, are you saying if we don't organize now, like if we don't all out organize now, we could face actual violence in our communities based on people literally forcefully taking away our vote, right? Like Zayed talked about fascism, he talked about, and I don't know, like, is this hyperbole? Like, could we face very soon, like this year, next year, right? Like, do we face the level of political violence directed at our communities that we have not really imagined to this point? Is that what is scaring you?
So you've seen some of it already. You saw it in Charlottesville. You saw some of it in Minneapolis, and you've seen it in other places. You've seen wherever those people who are supposedly coming together in nonviolent demonstrations on behalf of families and vulnerable people and working people and people of that nature, that there's been this disruption that's taken place, that there have been lives that have been taken, that there have been confrontations, physical confrontations. I think that a lot of the work that the January 6th committee is doing, and even the FBI and the Department of Justice, that we're not necessarily hearing about it, is trying to get to what are the threats, how do they manifest, and how do we ensure that they don't materialize? Because yes, I do believe we're in a very dangerous time. We've got members of Congress that are getting death threats. I mean, I've even had threats against my safety, but not like some of my colleagues who get it routinely. There is a
so congressmen are getting routinely threatened, like their lives are being threatened.
Yes, like some members of the squad that you mentioned earlier. And we have a person who was a former president of the United States of America who continues to foment this hatefulness. We've got people in Congress that are fomenting this hatefulness. They're so hateful that they're even turning on each other right now. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But we are in a very dangerous period. And yes, we need to be connected. We need to be communicating, and we need to be organized.
Right on. And that's a cherry on top of the ice cream sundae. Mm-hmm. Right on.
Yeah, and especially when you're talking about the urgency of organizing in the way that you're talking about.
Remember, we had Attica Scott on with us. Attica's a young city councilwoman in Louisville, Kentucky, who was attacked and arrested at a peaceful protest for Breonna Taylor. She's running for Congress now too, by the way. Okay. Madam Congressman, we want to pay attention to that.
Okay.
Right young sister who I think the world of personally. But a stand-up, another fresh stand-up young voice, whose community, really, basically bred her for this moment and this time. Go ahead, Ed. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jonathan. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and I don't want to focus so much on the scariness, but all the positive things that we're talking about right now in terms of the people who are coming up, the people who are organizing, what's good things that are going on in Georgia. If state legislatures can make votes disappear, I don't know what happens to Philadelphia or parts of Atlanta based on if they had legally been able to do that, as in if the people that were in power had simply said yes, then they would have given it the force of law, like what they're doing now, and they would be legally disenfranchising entire Black communities, as it seems like they want to do, because they're like, white people are becoming a minority within the country. Do you think that we underestimate the white people becoming a majority in the country? I mean, minority in the country, vote in terms of voting, and they're feeling that they are losing less, that they're losing. Do you think we're underestimating that in what we're doing?
I don't think so. I think we recognize that white people recognize that they're going to be a minority, and it very much is troubling to them. But I tell you, you can kind of plot the where we are now with the deterioration of the Voting Rights Act and what the Supreme Court has done to dismantle it. And I think that it is vitally important that Congress passes a Voting Rights Act so that we can protect the access to the vote and the security of the vote, state by state, municipality by municipality, like we did before sections 4 and 5 and even 2 have been negatively impacted by the Supreme Court. We've got to codify this law.
Well, thank you so much. I know, Zaid, I know you have the last question. I know we're going toward the end of this segment, but ask that question, Zaid.
We're going to light things up for you as we leave you, Madam Congresswoman. But quiet as it's kept. This is even though our content is heavy, this is actually a hip hop talk show, right? So the question that we ask all of our guests, particularly our first time guests, is who are you listening to in the land of hip hop, or do you have a favorite artist that you're listening to at all?
I listen to Tremaine Hawkins.
All right.
Okay.
And that's sorry. Let that trumpet play. That's all right. I'm a jazz poet, so this is really a stretch for me too. So that's
I know. The older I get, the more I stick with gospel music because I need the hopefulness of it.
Fair.
Well, I want to thank you supremely for giving us your time. I want to thank you supremely for your presence where you are in Congress. We need more Bonnie Watson Colemans. I hope you have a neighborhood full of mentees that are ready to come up behind you, so we can widen our ranks. Right? And of course, you have an open mic here whenever you need it. At All Politics and Local. It's been an honor to have you with us, man. Thank you.
Is there any last thing that you'd like to leave us with, given this anniversary of 1/6?
I think I may be having some connection issues.
Yeah,
they're
never
having connection issues. But
I just
Sue, will y'all hear me okay?
Oh, wait, hold on. I'm sorry. You're saying what do you want to leave us with?
That we should never have that experience again. The other thing that I want to leave with you is that I'm so glad you exist. Thank you for doing what you do.
That means a lot coming from you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, that is, and as Zaid said, well, you are welcome back and anytime, and hopefully we will be back on our show quite often. All right. So that is that first segment of All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio. And this is going to be a 1/6 kind of night, because we started off with Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman, who was in the Capitol on 1/6, who had actually contracted coronavirus from that, and just talked to us for the last 45 minutes. And now we're going to have a conversation about a protest, about some organizing that was talked about in the last segment. So, Zaid, can you introduce this segment and why you thought this segment was so important? Because I know we have our familiar guest, Larry Hamm, on, who is brilliant organizer. And can you introduce both of our guests and why you thought both of these guests should be on tonight to talk about 1-6?
Well, one was that you heard me talk about, you've heard, one of our guests talk about it on a regular basis, that we definitely at a crossroads so precarious in this country that we're looking at the specter of fascism being right in our face. But then there's a question, what is the antidote, right? What do we do? What is the world that we want to see? And what is our responsibility for this particular moment? And I would dare say that the time has come for a bolder, wider, and very vibrant united front of a progressive agenda that is up and down this state, right? And one of our guests has made some hellified noise in the southern part of the state, and has ruffled some feathers that some have previously thought were untouchable, right? I'm shouting you out for that. So we see what you've been doing down there in Camden. We definitely appreciate that, right? So there's a need to bring that forward. So these two voices, two different ranges of experience, right? But two hugely energizing presences as organizers represent what a progressive united front ought to look like. Sue Altman, with New Jersey Working Families, who's had the distinction of being chased out of the state house and other elected officials' houses, and we love that, kid. I love that.
Right. You said chased out of the state house?
Yes. Some of us went nuts when this, Sue, you and I.
She got dragged out, not chased out.
That's right.
Dragged
Yeah,
out.
the state police.
Wow.
The state police hates us both, Sue. So you got company on that one. All right. But I appreciate both of you. I appreciate what Sue did last night. She organized a pro-democracy rally that looks like what that kind of united front should look like. Multiracial, intergenerational. It had those dimensions. Even brought out the young Latina Republican sister who was looking for some space to be safe. I was like, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, and I want to follow up and try and get hold of her because she needs to be spoken to. So if there's going to be civility brought back into this whole thing, we got to talk to those folks who are civil. Right?
Absolutely.
We're going to have those conversations, right? So last night was a launch pad, I would dare say, for the kind of organizer that we need to see to be the antidote to the fascism that we're trying to run up against. So Sue Altman, first time with us in All Politics and Local. Welcome.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Been with us all just last week and a regular here on this front. Welcome back. Tell us about last night and why that was so important. Sue, you started off.
All right, I'll start us off. So last night was important for exactly the reason you said. It was this extraordinarily broad coalition made up of labor and grassroots groups. And like you said, we even had a Republican. We have civil rights groups. We had Pop, obviously. Larry's here. And we had a great team that put it together. And what was so exciting about it is I think people are still really tired and worn down after COVID, after, all the advocacy, seeing Build Back Better fail, feeling like all the work they're doing doesn't change anything. But I think, and then so when that happens, like there tends to be divisiveness and there tends to be conflict even within the left. And I think and that's great. Like I'm all for a messy left coalition. Like, trust me, I'm the first person to pick a fight with the Democratic Party, as you alluded to.
Yes.
But then I think we have to show a little variety in our game. So it's like, we sometimes fight you. And then we sometimes invite you to a rally in which we're going to show that we all believe in democracy and we all believe at the end of the day, we might disagree on these different pieces, but we all agree that voting rights and the right to vote and the right to elect our representatives, like that's the thing that we all have to agree on for this American thing to work. And I think the stakes are super high in 2022. And so it was a joy to put that event together with our team. Larry helped out. Artie Krybeck up in CD5, she helped out. Justin Goldsman, labor organizer on Murphy's campaign, he helped out. Yasmin Pauling, young woman from Jersey City, she's on our staff, she helped out. So it was just a really incredible coming together moment that you said, and I agree, is gonna be a launch pad into a program that prioritizes voter engagement and democracy.
Now, just to clear one thing I was maybe a little confused about. when you were dragged out of the State House, that was a Democrat in charge of the State House.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
And and you
It's
invited
Jersey,
the
baby.
Republicans to the rally.
I sure did. When
Okay.
I zig, I zag, I go across
Right,
the
like
whole thing.
Democrat was like, "Get out. We will drag you out." And you're like, "Hey, Republican, let's talk." And they were like,
Yeah.
"Sure."
And look, we had Democrats at last night's rally too. Like Representative Donald Payne, he did a great job. Representative Mikey Sherrill, she came hustling back from DC. We had some mayors, we had labor leaders. Like it was definitely a Democratic, like dominant event last night. But you know what? We should
It was
make
what the Democratic Party ought to look like.
Yeah, exactly. And then we should make space in this democracy project for Republicans. Look, we don't have to agree on everything, but we got to make space, a little bit of space, for those of whom in the Republican Party didn't want to endorse Trump, did accept the results of the election. Then, like, all right, we can work with you. Like, we can work with this. We don't have to agree, but we can work with this. And Maria Rodriguez-Gregg, the woman who we invited, the former assemblywoman on the GOP side, to me, she represented that. She got death threats, just like I heard you talking to Representative Watson Coleman about that, for not endorsing Trump. So for me, I'm like, all right, you know what? You're in this fight with us for this fight. We're not going to agree on other stuff, but temporarily, can we have an alliance? I think we can.
Larry.
The demo was.
Yes.
No. I would just open it up, right? Normally, I don't have to do too much rev up. I could be like, what are your thoughts on this?
Why was last night so important?
Right.
Well, last night was great. I think it was one of the greatest rallies we've had in a long time. I was pleasantly surprised at the big turnout. I mean, it was freezing out there last night. Snow was on the way. Everybody knew it. It was dark, but people came out. Like the park, Spiata Park, was full. This rally was important. And let me just give my kudos and utmost respect. My kudos to the New Jersey Working Families Party for calling it and being the prime sponsor, and for their organizer par excellence, our friend here, Sue Altman. And I hope to continue working with New Jersey Working Families Party in this manner. This rally was important because there's been a concerted effort since the attack on the Capitol, the really domestic terrorism. That's what it was. It was a domestic terrorist attack on the Capitol by racists and fascists on January the 6th. And since then, there's been a concerted effort coming from many corners to in fact try to both rewrite the history of what happened that day and to try and make it disappear. So it was important to have this event to remember that it happened, but also to condemn that it happened, because really the condemnation really hasn't come forward, in a mass kind of way. I mean, when it first happened, of course, the pundits and editorialists and so forth condemned it. But this probably was the first kind of activity that the masses of people could participate to show their outrage at what happened on January the 6th. And then the important reason why we needed to have this was to, in fact, talk about how we could prevent this from happening again. Because whether folks know it or not, the coup is not over. That was like stage one. That was the dress rehearsal. The coup is ongoing. The 400 bills introduced in 49 states to limit people's right to vote, that's part of the coup. The bills that have been introduced to circumscribe people's freedom of assembly to protest, that's part of the coup. The attempts to stifle people, the attacks on critical race theory, which is really an attack on African-American history and the truth of the history of the United States.
History, right.
That's part of the coup. All of these things are ongoing. And so this is why we had to have this action last night. And I'm so glad we did. And I was glad to be there and glad to speak last night.
to your point, I posted an article that was written by Barton Gellman in the Atlantic.
Great
It's
show.
extensive, and it is it really is talking about how Trump's coup has already begun, and it goes really into detail about all of the different things that are happening in different states, and all of the different movements across the country that are literally have the power to actually legally do what Trump was trying to do last time, right? Overturn the will of the people, overturn an election, but do so with the force of law.
And with the force of arms.
Right.
Right. But I think this point that Jonathan is making, and Sue, I mean, if you want to jump in, I'll pull back so you can jump in right now. But I think this point that Jonathan is making is important. This coup, which really could be characterized as a push, you have to look that up. I'm not going to try and explain it tonight. But this coup that took place, and that's what we should talk about, because see, when people say insurrection, an insurrection is an uprising of people, but it doesn't tell you what the people were doing to uprise. This was a coup. This was an uprising to seize power in an illegal way, to underscore Zaid's point. But the thing to really understand about this coup is that most of the means being used to achieve it were legal.
Right.
Trump used three things.
Right.
He used the Constitution and how the Constitution regulates the Electoral College. He used the Electoral Count Act, which is where he got the idea that that Pence could in fact reject the results of the Electoral College. And he used the Insurrection Act, which was his trump card, no pun intended, which was his card to in fact be able to declare an emergency and install himself as president. People don't understand what was going down here. He was going to install himself as a dictator, because that's what martial law does. Martial law suspends civilian rights. When the army tells you to get your ass off the street at 6 o'clock, if you're not off the street, you get shot. That's what martial law is. And black people in Newark know all about martial law because we lived under martial law.
That's right.
In 1967. So this is what was going down here. He used the pressure points of the system all in these cuts. You see, the threat to democracy started way before January 6th. January 6th was a notable point. Sue, come on, jump in here.
No, I'm with you, Larry. That is exactly right. And I think we are at a real turning point. You have the threat. I mean, you mentioned the threat of violence, guns. We're in a situation, and Hetty spoke about this last night, and as did you, Larry, where we could have armed bands of people feeling like they have the right to go interfere and protest like we had last night and feel justified about it because they think for some perverse reason that they believe in Trump and all that he says, that they're in the right here. And it really does come down to a fundamental vision about whether or not democracy is worth keeping. Is it worth fighting for? Is it worth mobilizing for? Is it worth organizing for? And I think what last night showed is that there is solidarity across a lot of different sectors, as you said, Larry, and that we do believe it is worth fighting for. It's worth standing out in the cold for. It is not a passive exercise. It is a live and active exercise that we need to commit to as a people to save this country, because the violence, the white supremacy, the racism, the constant sort of misinformation and all that nonsense is an extraordinary threat on the institutions that have allowed this country to even exist as long as it has. But there's no guarantee here. This is something we have to fight for, and every generation has to show up for it. That's why the intergenerational piece, Larry, that you pointed out was really, really important, because we have to learn from the people who came before us. We have to learn from those who survived and fought in the rebellions in the 1960s in Newark and other places. And we have to apply those lessons to what's happening right now, because they're not discrete moments. It's the same historical thread that iterates itself back around. And white supremacy is a hell of a drug, and folks have been feeling that way for a long time, and it's just going to rear its ugly head again, and we have to be ready for it.
Reconstruction was not ended simply by the handshake between Samuel Tilden and Rutherford B. Hayes, right? It was the unleashing of the right wing on Black communities throughout the South, right, that ended Reconstruction, right? That happened then. We have to be concerned about what that looks like now. Now, I want to hear now, Adema, you raised some critical points about how that played out and how that's playing out. Now, we're now in 2022, right? An important crossroads election year, right? What are some of the levels that we have to be concerned about locally, nationally, and you know, and you raised some last night. I want to give you a chance to raise some of them here on this microphone and before this audience as well, that we need to be trying to build on the one hand and deconstruct on the other hand.
Yes, we find ourselves, particularly Black people, in an unusual place. But you know, history is the best instrument to inform our perspectives and our strategies and our tactics. We've been in a similar spot before. Just think about what it must have been like for Black people during World War II to consider going to fight the Nazis in Germany. And we were the victims of racism here at home. In fact, Nazism was inspired by American racism.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You can read Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf was what Hitler wrote when he was in prison for a year for what they call the beer hall push, which really was a kind of piece of street theater, but because you know he framed it in the context of an attack on the state, they put him in jail for a year. And in jail, he wrote Mein Kampf, and he wrote admiringly of racial segregation in the United States and the racial laws and policies, and I guess one way to put it would be the relegation of the Native American to Bantustans. That's a form of racial separation. This inspired Nazi Germany, and Nazi Germany inspired South Africa.
That's right.
The whole Bantustan policy in South Africa was based on the system of American Indian reservations here in the United States. So when Hitler was rising up and the call came out, you know, leaders like Du Bois was saying, we got to stop fascism. And a lot of people were raising the question, you know, well, we don't have freedom right here. I mean, those of you who saw A Soldier's Story, remember that that scene, right? Ed, did you see A Soldier's Story? You remember that scene where they took the German prisoners of war that were on the base in the United States? They took them to the ice cream parlor.
That's
and
right.
The German prisoners could go in the ice cream parlor down there by that military base down south, and the Black soldiers couldn't go in there.
Right.
But see, the NACP and the leaders of that time put out what they called the double V strategy, that we had to have victory against the fascists in Germany, and not just the fascists in Germany. Remember, it was an axis. It was Germany, Italy, and Japan. Those were the fascist powers. So they had the double V, victory against the fascists abroad and victory against racism at home. That was the double V strategy. And we find ourselves in this peculiar, you know, position once again. Every time I hear people say, well, we got to save our democracy, you know, I have to pause for a minute. You know, the democracy wasn't so great.
Democracy or chickens coming home to roost?
Before January the 6th. But the truth of the matter is that if we don't stop this fascist juggernaut, our situation will be even worse. They are absolutely determined. So what's in the immediate? One of the things we must try to do is try, although the odds were against us. Remember, they said the odds were against Murphy being elected to a second term, because it hadn't happened in New Jersey for for almost 50 years. But because of the mass turnout that was similar actually to the turn, when you look at the numbers, the turnout in New Jersey was similar to what the presidential election was.
Right.
And so Murphy was able to squeak by, and he defied the odds. The odds right now say that Democrats will lose the Congress in 2022. That would be a disaster. That would be disastrous. Now, could we survive it? Yes, we survived it. We survived slavery. We survived Jim Crow. But we can't make believe that somehow that would be to our advantage, or it wouldn't be us, make our situation worse. So we need to have massive voter registration, but not only voter registration, voter mobilization. Democrats outnumber Republicans 2-1 in New Jersey, but only about half the Democrats come out and vote. A little more than half came out. That's why Murphy won over Citrelli in this last election. So we need to come out. We need to not only have massive voter, the Democratic Party right now should be putting out a plan for massive voter registration in the state Democratic Party, and in the nation, the National Democratic Party, because they could in fact turn the tide if we register more Democrats and get more Democrats, then mobilize those Democrats and get them to the polls. But then the other thing is, the Democrats have to do things that are going to inspire people to vote for them.
Yes.
Now, this is problematical. This is problematical because what? Because we got Democrats in name only, dinos, Democrat in name only. That's Sinema and Manchin. These two, I wish I had a word for them. You know, Republicans in disguise. You know, they are holding up the whole program. So what Biden is going to have to do, he's going to have to do a lot of stuff through executive orders. Like, he did good in terms of making that speech. The speech was problematical, but nonetheless, he made a strong statement against racism, a strong statement against fascism. He even mentioned the word fascism during his remarks. But he's gonna have to do some stuff. He's gonna have to do some stuff through executive orders. For instance, through executive orders, Biden could eliminate student debt. He could eliminate 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 through executive order. Now, this executive order would only be in effect during the time that he's in office, but he got to do something, because a lot of people aren't going to vote for Democrats just because they say they're Democrat. The Democrats have to deliver, and then they have to do more things. So that's one thing, you know, that needs to be done immediately. But some other things, like we need same-day registration in New Jersey. Why is it that people can't register to vote at the polling place and go ahead and vote on election day? What's going to do? How much money is that going to cost? It's not going to cost no money. Why people oppose that? Because the truth is that there are a lot of people, even people who have called themselves Democrat, who really act in an undemocratic way. They really don't want to unleash the power that the masses of people have.
Right.
Because if we lifted all barriers to voting, they would vote. A lot of people might get voted out of office, but we need same-day registration. You know what else we need? We need a constitutional amendment that guarantees the right to vote. Why is it that Black people's voting rights got to be renewed every 10 or 20 years? Why we just can't have an amendment to the Constitution which guarantees every citizen's right to vote from the time they're old enough to vote till they die, period, regardless of race, religion, nationality, creed, whatever. And then we wouldn't have to go through these perennial gyrations about renewing voting rights every so many years. I'm gonna shut up and let other people talk.
But see, you two are the energizers, so that's why we brought you together.
No, I love it. Last night, Larry talked for like 15 minutes at the end. He was great. He had everybody captivated, and it was brilliant. And then Mikey Sherrill showed up, and it was, I mean, no one could have kept the audience captivated the way Larry did. He had them eating out of the palm of his hand at the end of an hour-long event in the freezing cold. So the more he speaks, the better off we all are, as far as I'm concerned. To Larry's point, like, I think that's entirely right. The voting access stuff is legit, and Larry's totally hitting on a point here, which is that, like, the opening of the floodgates is even a little scary for Democratic Party leaders. Some of them in New Jersey and other states are so parochial that all they really care about is their little kingdom and, like, Congress be damned, And so they're actually a little worried that if we did same-day voter registration, and I think Larry was basically saying this, it would put too much confusion and uncertainty into the system. And they rely on the same voters, not too many, same old reliable ones every single election. And if you were to do same-day voter registration, we could organize a gazillion people on election day, get them to the polls to register and vote one-stop shop. And that would cause all kinds of changes in their models, in their polling, and they would be thrown for a loop. So I do think there's a tension here between sometimes party officials in the state want to control their little kingdoms and their little municipalities or their counties, and the health of the democracy as a country and New Jersey's role in that. So looking ahead to 2022, there are a few districts that are going to be really close calls, but it's important to raise voting awareness and to like get those habits of voting out, because part of it's access for sure, and part of it's just a sense of habit. Like, this is what I do. I am a voter and I go vote because I care about these things, because like Larry said, my representative delivers for me. They deliver for my community. So we need to pay attention for this primary election, and then we need to pay attention to the swing districts in this state, which are 3, 11, and 7. And then we also need to look ahead, because the governor's race and the assembly and the Senate races are right around the corner. So it is going to be a voters next few years, and we need to get as many people on board as possible in the next few months.
I have a question. A lot of times Democrats always talk about, right, like in previous, like this, the rise of fascism, the danger to democracy, that this election or voting now is uniquely important. And we've heard that in every election, right? Is there a danger that when there is actually a real credible danger of votes being erased legally and people being set like an actual legal fascist movement that could actually kill people, right? Like that actually could be violent. Like it, do we run the risk in just pointing out stuff that could happen, but people are already so used to hearing that this next election is so important. This voting now is so important. Like, how do you cut through so that people would recognize that this is something different?
I'm so glad you asked that, and I'll let Larry answer for sure, because I'm sure you thought a lot about this. But I think like voting is a habit. Like it's not like you have a voting budget and you can only vote 5 times and you better choose your elections carefully. Like, the more you vote, the more you're likely to vote the next time. So I think it's okay to make people feel like there's a sense of urgency. But then this gets back to Larry's point, which is there's a tension here because the media and the way we talk about elections, the way campaigns are run, is very nationalized. Like, in many ways, the governor's race was a referendum on like Trump and Trumpism. And that can be a powerful weapon. But as you point out, it has a double-edged sword because it has a distancing effect. It makes me sitting at my house feel like, well, I'm just one little voter in a sea of 250 million people. I'm not one little voter in my school board race or one little voter in my town or in my county. And I think, like you said, we have to keep bringing these national themes back home to where they matter to us in our communities, because all of it engages voters, and that's the practice that will sustain a long-term commitment to vote.
Yes, the danger is already here. You know where we're at. You know what's funny? What's funny is that what happened on January 6th was not a big secret. People were saying, like back in June of 20, people were saying that the right was planning to make some serious moves. People, there are people like the Southern Poverty Law Center, whose job it is to monitor right-wing racist, white supremacist organizations. And groups like that have been telling us for years that these people are on the rise and moving forward. But specifically, they were saying that they were going to make a move on this election. In fact, if that wasn't enough for you, Donald Trump, in his first debate with Joe Biden in August of 20, was asked point blank by the moderator, Mr. President, can you guarantee a peaceful transition of power, a peaceful transfer of power in the United States? And Trump would not answer yes. That was a signal right there. And what did he take? Not only did he not say yes, when they started talking about the Proud Boys and these people, these fascists and racists and Nazis that kill people, like Heather Heyer, he told them,
stand down.
told them what, Zaid? Stand back and stand by. He didn't say stand down. He said stand back and stand by. That was a signal. They have already passed laws in Georgia and other states that will take the counting of the votes and the certification of the election out of the hands of the Secretary of State and others and put it in the hands of the state legislature. So now it won't be the Secretary of State in Georgia that will finalize the election. If the election doesn't go the way the Republicans want, they can say, we're taking this out of the hands of the Secretary of State, and the certification of the election will be done by the state legislature, which is Republican control. This thing is going down right around us. And it's like we in the eye of the hurricane, and the sun's shining and the birds are singing, but all hell is breaking loose on the outskirts. Did you know that if you're in the eye of the hurricane, you might not even know there's a hurricane? And that's the way we are now. That's the way this thing is going right now. I mean, just think about it. The leading candidate right now for the Republican Party in 2024 is Donald Trump. Twice impeached, defeated by the public vote and electoral vote, being indicted. He's under indictment in a number of states, including New York State. He's the leading candidate. They just did a poll of Republicans. Half of Republicans do not see the attack on the Capitol as something bad. And not only that, they say violence would be justified. This is right now in 2021. This thing is worse than it was in 1960. But what they have done, they're slicker. See, this is not Bull Connor. These are some slick MFs that have gone to college, that have gone to law school. These were the people that put the plan together. This is how we can do this thing legally. Hell, if they can do a hostile takeover of corporations, they can do a hostile takeover of the American government without firing a shot. And what do you think they want to do when they come to power? Take all this shit back that we got, that we fought and died for the last 75 years. That's what they want to do. And they're being funded by right-wing billionaires like the Koch brothers and the Mercers and others. You think this thing happens without a lot of money? All kind of millions of dollars are being raised to fund these people, to pay their legal bills. Hell, Donald Trump is not even paying his own legal bills. His legal bills are being paid by the Republican Party. We need to abolish the Electoral College, because that's the core, that's the heart of this strategy. It's this whole process of electors and electoral colleges that enables people to pinpoint certain events that they can nullify, by which they can nullify the popular vote. Like, for instance, a state, if the person who wins, I don't know if y'all know this, but when your candidate wins for president in a state, his electors become the electors for that state. But now they done passed laws and said, hell, we can reject the electors. We can put in our own electors, regardless of who won the election in our state. This is why they want to modify the Electoral Count Act. Do you know that just if you get just one senator and one House rep to object to the Electoral College results, that can cause a whole nullification of the electoral college vote. Just one in each house. So we need to abolish this electoral college. I mean, just think about it. When we elect a governor, do we have a popular election? And then the county exec from the 21 counties, they have a vote to decide? No, the governor's elected with the popular vote. The Congress people are elected with the popular vote. Why don't we have direct election of the president of the United States? Because the slave masters, see, that's why people say, you know, our democracy is Donald Trump. No, this thing goes back to the roots of America, how this Constitution was written. It was written so that the slave masters and oligarchs could always have control. Lincoln was Washington was a slave master. Jefferson was a slave master. The first 7, 8 presidents were slave masters. We have an electoral college because the Southern colonies wouldn't agree to have a United States unless they could have more power than they deserve. That's why we have an electoral college. That's why we got a Senate. I mean, think about it. New York got 18 million people. They get 2 senators. Rhode Island got 500,000 people. They get 2 senators. What the hell is that? Another mechanism by which to give those Southern slave-holding colonies more power than they deserve. This thing is very serious. Look, Westfield. Talk about CRT, critical race theory. Westfield, New Jersey just banned Toni Morrison's book.
Toni Morrison, that's right.
Did you know that?
That's
They
right.
just banned Toni. It's not just down south. It's not just Arkansas.
Right.
It's not just Alabama. Right here in New Jersey, they're electing Nazis and neo-Nazis
To school boards. Mhm.
to school boards.
Yeah. So yeah, Sue, you want to respond?
Yeah, I mean, the school board thing is really frightening. Working Families is going to be looking at that as well this year, trying to map out which districts have elections at which time and where there's threats. You know, Larry's point is well taken. It's extremely frightening. The school board stuff is almost so frightening, it's hard to get our head around because it's so diffuse.
Yeah.
But you know what? Now that I'm thinking, like, maybe there's a way to connect the problems, right? Like, we have low voter engagement, but people really care about their public schools. They really care about where their kids go to school. They really care. And if we want to motivate voters, this is what the right is doing. They're setting up people to run for school board office, which will inspire, oh, you're going to keep on voting down the Republican line. So I think that's something we need to be thinking about as a movement. Where do we feel like we need to be playing at very local levels to run inspiring candidates, which acts as a springboard to get folks engaged in these 2022 elections? I think that's an excellent question, an excellent point, and a daunting task because it's going to mean a lot of regular, everyday people going to have to step up because being on a school board is hard work. Running for school board office, hard work.
Running for office, period, is hard work. So I want you to do something because this is your first time on the show, right? I want you to take a step back and tell us a little bit about New Jersey Working Families and just what New Jersey Working Families does. Now, those of us who are in the know, we know. Well, I want you to share that with our audience so they know, and so you have some more allies you can call on.
No, I'm so glad. So Working Families is a statewide organization. It was founded about 20 years ago. Hetty Rosenstein, who was at the rally last night and did an incredible job, lit the place on fire. She and some others were some of the co-founders. Our board is made up, like our sort of like brain trust is the Institution of Labor. So I'm wearing a CWA hat right now. CWA, 32BJ, NJEA, a bunch of CWA locals, 194, and on and on. So we got a really strong labor contingency, which is awesome because that is an institution, not without its own problems, but it is an institution on the left that provides a backbone that, while imperfect a lot of the time, does provide a lot of strength for this movement over the long haul. So we got unions, we got advocacy groups, you got your citizen actions, your blue waves, and then we've got grassroots groups, like some of the smaller grassroots groups that are more local. And we work on a statewide agenda. We work on electoral politics. So we're part of the Working Families Party nationally. In New York, Working Families Party has a line in the general election. They're their own actual political party. Here, the laws are different so far. And as you know, as everyone on this square knows, it's really, really hard to run in primary elections in New Jersey for a couple of reasons, which are very endemic to New Jersey. Talk about voter suppression, talk about some gerrymandering, talk about some voter turnout problems. We create those ourselves. So we don't run a working families party line, but we do a lot of candidate endorsements. We try to support electoral causes we believe in. We'll recruit candidates. We'll work with people. We'll try to get them up to speed. And at the same time, we run programs. We build coalitions. We do a lot of organizing. So we have a staff of 2 right now. So it's really small and lean. It's me and Yasmin. But we're adding 2 more people this year, which I'm very excited about. And we were really savvy media folks. We got some good media team. We work with our national organization a lot. So yeah, that's what we do. And we like to pick fights with powerful people. So we do a lot of anti-corruption work, which means I'm really busy.
Yo, Jersey. Oh my God, that is so Jersey.
Yeah, which is why I was dragged out of the State House by our friends, the cops. So yeah, like it's been a really wonderful time. I've been there 3 years. My predecessor was Anna Lilia Mieja, who went off to work with Bernie Sanders, is now the co-director of the Center for Popular Democracy. So it's a great organization. I'm thrilled and very grateful to be here in this role. I think it's a really important role, an important moment. But we have strong allies and strong partners, and that group of stakeholders is where we drive our power and our strength. So yes, we're an organization, but our organization really represents a movement, and that's why I'm in this work.
On another level, I'm going to have you come in and talk. We have a statewide coalition for police reform.
Yes, you do. You're doing great work on that.
Yeah, I'm going to have you come in and talk to our group one of these Mondays. So stay tuned for an invite for some of that, because especially when we move into the new legislative session, because we're going to have a lot to unpack with that. All right. So as we wind this session down, and it was a fiery session as I expected, right? Both of y'all are the energizers of the progressive movement in the state, right? What should be our next? You know, we big picture some things, but what should be our immediate next moves that we should be considering as we coming off of the strength of that important rally, coming off of the hopefully a genuine awakening about what January 6th means in terms of a challenge to all of our freedoms. You know, what should be our immediate next? What should be our immediate takeaways coming out of this particular week and this anniversary?
Well, I would urge people to march with us on Dr. King's birthday, January 15th, to re-raise this whole question, you know, because Dr. King, Black people's struggle was a struggle for democracy. I mean, we had to have a Voting Rights Act so that 4 million Black people in the South could vote, because they were being denied the right to vote. So we need to re-raise, you know, that whole relationship on Saturday, January 15th, the actual birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King. We're going to meet at 12 noon at the Lincoln statue, which is 12 Springfield Avenue at the intersection of Springfield and West Market Street. And we're going to rally and march on Dr. King's birthday. In fact, we're calling it the Martin Luther King March for Voting Rights and Racial Justice. That's the march on the 15th. But there's another project that All Politics Are Local leaders have been really pushing hard, and that's the National Black Political Convention.
That's right. That's
coming up in the spring. I think this is a key event. I think this may be the key Black political event for 2022. And if the participation is what we hope it to be, I think it will be it could possibly be as consequential as was the National Black Political Convention in Gary, Indiana in 1972. And Ed, you have been playing a yeoman's role.
That's right.
Pulling this thing together. And I just want to commend you for all the work that you have done to get this thing off the ground. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why there ain't been one in 50 years, but you were able to overcome those obstacles and get key leaders like Mayor Baraka from Newark and Mayor Antar Lumumba from Jacksonville, Mississippi, to be co-conveners along with the great cultural artist James Mtume. I think this national convention in April is something that we all should embrace. And there ain't a lot of time the
That's
convention is going to be, I believe, the end of April and the last week in April, beginning of May. So that only gives us really about 4 months to organize. But the People's Organization for Progress, we've already endorsed this convention. And I think this dovetails right along with what Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman said tonight and what you guys have been saying for years. And that is that we need a Black political agenda.
That's right.
You know, and it's my hope that the agenda will encompass this whole question, will also deal with this whole question of voting rights, political participation, et cetera, et cetera. Like one of the things that Gary, a lot of people don't know, one of the planks that we passed in Gary in 1972 was statehood for the District of Columbia.
right.
District of Columbia still don't have statehood.
That's
If
right.
they had statehood, we would have 2 more senators and we wouldn't be having this problem with Sinema and Manchin. I mean, you got to understand the reason why we have these problems because they come from these purple states. In fact, Manchin comes out of a state. He's a Democrat that was elected, but Trump won his state in the election. And Sinema comes out of Arizona, which for the last couple of decades has been Republican. It flipped for Biden, but the majority of the voters are still Republicans. So there's a reason, there's a material basis for why they act the way they act. But I think that one of the key things that has to be part of our strategy is making this convention a success, getting the masses of our people to participate in it, getting the other leaders to participate in it, and come out with an agenda that will touch all aspects of Black life, and especially political empowerment, Black political empowerment.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Larry. I think that where we are now and some of the conversations I'm engaged in around the country, and of course, you all haven't been on some of these meetings that have been organized this week, but I've got to tell you, I've been communicating with Mayor Baraka, and one of the things I've told him, Larry, is that his dream has come to fruition. Right? He said that 2 years ago he wanted to be able to see all of these organizations around the country and in the diaspora, people talking. And I'm telling you that there were meetings all this week on different committees, and there were people. I mean, in one committee alone, there were 70 people. Right?
Wow.
And what's disturbing to me though, Larry, is that the low number of participation in the city of Newark, people who said they were going to participate, and I told the mayor that, I said, but man, the love and support that you have around the country is enormous. When I told him that there was one committee with 70 people on the call, he almost fell off the screen, right? And I told him, I said, brother, I said, these organizations, and just the mere fact of Tamika and her organization, these brothers and sisters organize organizations all over the country, and they are joining in. I'm saying, oh my God, this is amazing to me. And then, not to mention the work that Rakia and her father's organization and all those old guards, I mean, from that organization. All of these people are basically PhDs and lawyers, and they've been waiting for this opportunity to come and get engaged. So, I mean, Larry, it is, I mean, these people are engaged to organize, but they also understand, which is what they said, they understand that this midterm election is coming, is going to speak volumes to where Black folk are in this country. And so when Bonnie Watson Coleman was saying what she was saying, she don't know the level of engagement I'm in, but I'm going to pull her into those conversations because I think she might be ready. Because what is that she believes that there should be a Black Agenda Summit. Little do she know, we're talking about a Black Agenda United Summit, right? Black all over the country and world coming together. So, I mean, all I can tell you, Larry, is that, I'm honored just to have had an opportunity to be front and center to see all of this coming together. I mean, just the mere fact of the mayors and elected officials that Brother Lumumba has organized will blow your mind. I mean, these are some dope brothers around the country that we're talking to.
Good.
And so, when we start announcing speakers and people who are coming, I mean, people are gonna fall out their seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ed, when is the next call? When is the next call,
Right,
Ed?
right.
The calls are every day, all week.
Every
right?
day?
Yeah. So there's a committee meeting. All of those committees, right? If you haven't joined the committee, everybody's joined different committees, right? That's why I told the mayor on the planning committee, you have 70 people. When I told him some of the names of the people, he was like, "Oh my God, Professor who? From what university? Oh my God, they were on that. Yep, they were on that call, brother." And they all participated. And then when I told him the organizations, we're talking about organizations that were vehemently against his father are now involved in this, right? So, I mean, just all of that, Larry, was but I'm saying Beatrice, who organized all of these people, every day, there are different organizations. Even Barbara Jeffries is on a committee and participating, organizing all of this and giving his wisdom to how all of this is coming together. So, I mean, it's been just absolutely amazing. So, I mean, all I can say is, man, is that I would like to see more of the city of Newark to that plate and not embarrass the mayor.
Mm-hmm. I got a wave that I got a wave of young folks I might be able to bring to you. So I wanted to give you a chance to respond to that, and we're going to wrap this session up.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. So I think we got to focus. I love what I'm hearing about getting voters engaged in Newark and other places. I think that's really, really important. And I also think for working families, we're probably going to be focused on the 3 flip districts in New Jersey. And I want to see more vote by mail. I want to see more student turnout. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what the Democracy Coalition, which we're building, which I want everyone to be part of, decides as a table to put our focus into. That would be my recommendation.
Mm-hmm. All right. So as we wind up, so this is your first time. I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to have some fun with. Right.
All right. Or we can have Rhino ask that question.
Go ahead, Rhino. Go ahead, Rhino.
All right. Well, first of all, I gotta say peace, Sue. How are you?
I'm great.
What's up, Larry? Big ups, Larry.
What's up,
Larry? You got me fired up earlier, man. You got me fired up. Nah, seriously. I mean, you were really breaking down what needed to be said and what needs to be heard, and yeah, the need to organize is real. Because that's you got me fired up, bro.
All right.
But for the Queen Sue, I wanted to ask her, being that it's a political hip hop show, who would you say that you have been impacted by the most in hip hop?
Oh man, that's a great question. Like, probably if this is going back, this is a throwback. I used to love Salt and Pepper when I was in the 1990s in high school. I loved that. Lately, and this is probably gonna get me in trouble, I love Kanye. I really do. And I know the man's nuts.
Okay.
His music is great. And Chance the Rapper.
Okay. All right. Sounds good to me. That's what's up.
So it's a good session, y'all. Sue, you have a mic here. If you need to sound a drum on some things, let us know. Right, you got a mic here to help us do that. That's how we get down, right? We'll see you in the streets. We got stuff coming up right away. 15th is right around the corner. We'll see you in the streets.
I like you said that. See you in the streets, because like you get dragged out of the state house, he gets dragged out of the state house. I'll see you in the streets. We'll be in the streets someplace organized. We'll be doing that. So thank you so much.
Right on, y'all.
So that is another segment of All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. So here's the question, DJ Rhino, what's going on? What's up? What's the state of hip hop?
Well, first off, we talked about it a couple of weeks back. When we were talking about the closing of the amphitheater in the East River, at the East River Park in New York City, and I was talking about the Wild Style movie and what took place at the amphitheater. I misspoke and I said I was talking about the director of that movie, and I said Tommy Ahern, and really his name is Charlie Ahern. So I just wanted to make that correction. I know that was like 3 weeks ago or whatever, but I just wanted to make that correction. Also, something that I missed last week, because I know we were really dealing with the loss of Street Doctor. You know, I also want to say rest in peace to Kango Kid from UTFO. UTFO was a group out of Brooklyn. It was Kango Kid, the educated rapper, Doc Ice, and their DJ Mixmaster Ice. They came out of Brooklyn. They had a song called Beats and Rhymes, and they put out another song called Hanging Out. On the B side of Hanging Out was a song called Roxanne, Roxanne. I was basically talking about, you know, this female that was basically turning down all of their advances, and you know they never got to get with Roxanne, Roxanne. And of course, anybody that's down in hip hop knows that that's where the whole Roxanne saga began. But Kango Kid was one of the main writers of that song and of many songs that they did, and they came together by way of the band Full Force. Full Force was a band from Brooklyn. The name UTFO is from the Untouchable Force organization. That's what UTFO stands for. But the brother Kango Kid, he was the one. He always wore the signature Kango, and you know we lost the brother to cancer. He was fighting cancer for a while. And I remember we would see clips and stuff of him in the hospital with different celebrities, you know, giving him love and taking shots with him and all of that. And honestly, you know, it was looking like he was going to pull through. It was looking like he was going to be all right. And then the next thing you know, boom, you get the news. He didn't make it. But then you see other clips where it was like he kind of knew that he wasn't going to make it. And so he had some final words and stuff of his own. But we lost Kango Kid of UTF, Roxanne fame. So rest in peace, Kango Kid. He also represented the Haitian nationality. You know what I'm saying? He was a Haitian brother also. So we want to pay respects to him on that. We also lost just yesterday. We lost Jesse D from the Full Force. Not Full Force. Pardon me. Jesse D from the Force MDs. The Force MDs was a singing, rapping group from Staten Island. They started off doing, they were like a rap group, like Cold Crush and everybody else. They were doing the singing and the rapping, the routines, human beatbox, dancing. They were known for their dance routines as well as their singing. They first got their big break on the Staten Island Ferry. That's where they would always perform. They were the first hip hop band group to come out of Staten Island that we knew of. That was before Wu-Tang, before the UMCs, before any of them. It was the Force MCs. And then after they got picked up in the industry, they changed their name to the Force MDs. So we just lost Jesse D. He was the one that used to always do the Michael Jackson impressions and stuff like that. You would see him singing like Mike and dancing like Mike. It's crazy because he's like the fourth one out of the group that we've lost. So there's only one left. Stevie D is the only one of the Force MDs that's left standing right now. We just lost Jesse D. I didn't even realize that we lost Trisco. We lost Trisco, Mercury, TCD, and now Jesse D. And so big ups to and condolences to Jesse D's family, to Steve D that's still surviving and living. Just condolences to everybody, man. That's been affected and impacted by all of the Force MDs, but definitely Jesse D. I want to say rest in peace to him. Prayers up to DJ K Slay. DJ K Slay was fighting COVID for about 14 days, over 14 days now. And at some point, he had to be put on a ventilator for his breathing, for his health. So, but they just got word today that he's been taken off the ventilator and he's back to breathing on his own. So that's a positive positive side. So we just want to keep the prayers out there for DJ K Slay. You know, one of the last things K Slay just did was to put 110 MCs from different eras, different facets of the country, you know, and put them together on one song. And it's amazing. If you ever go, it's like 40 minutes long. It's a 40-minute long video, but it's got 110 classic MCs on this one song that he created. But yeah, big ups to K Slay and prayers to him.
And Rhino, before you move on, let me just ask you a question. Was he vaccinated?
K Slay, I'm not sure if he was. I'm not sure. I got to do the research on that one. But definitely want to send prayers to him, man. Make sure he gets better, man. Because we don't want to lose that brother at all. I want to say happy birthday to my man, the one half of this legendary group right here from our city, Brick City, Newark, Artifacts. I want to say happy born to my man Elder Sensei from Newark East Orange. He's been in both. Big ups and happy born to my man. He just made 50, made that mark, that 5-0 mark. So I want to say big ups to my man Elder Sensei of the Artifacts Boom Squad. That's them original. And also happy born to my man Chris Cool, Tenor Rock FC. And that's about it, y'all. I don't have a whole lot more news. It was kind of dark, you know what I'm saying, with all the RIPs and stuff, man.
Yeah,
you know,
let me
everybody dealing with, you know, what's going on with the health and COVID and all that, right?
Yeah, let me share a couple just to add to that. Well, one is that when we did our tribute to Street, we were told the whole January 14th. Those arrangements have been made. He's going to be at Pastor Jerry Smith's church, the Transcend Worship Center on 971 Clinton Avenue on the morning of the 14th. There will be a viewing for him, a 3-hour viewing for him. And it's understandable because Street knew so many people and he touched so many people. From 9 to 12. Usually the viewing is like for an hour. But his viewing is going to be for 3 hours because he touched so many people. And the service will actually begin at 12 noon, from 12 to 2. So the 14th, that's next Friday morning at the Transcend Worship Center. That's that big blue church on 971 Clinton Avenue. We want folks to look forward to that. One of our guests, when Derek Chauvin went on trial, I brought in Mel Reeves, a veteran journalist who's one of the most important journalists for the Minnesota Spokesman Reporter, Minneapolis' oldest black newspaper. He just went out of here, and he went out of here from COVID. And I come to find out that Mel wasn't vaccinated, right? But it caught him aggressively, and so we no longer have a very critical advocacy journalist voice that's been a veteran journalistic presence of a very progressive kind in the Midwest for a long time in Mel Reeves. So I want to say rest in peace to that brother and to that comrade, just to add to that. So the 14th, hold the 14th. We got the time and place now. Transcend Worship Center for Street, 971 Clinton Avenue, 9 a.m. The funeral starts at 12 noon for our beloved Albesta Street Doctor. We miss you, Street.
Yeah. And also want to say rest in peace, Sidney Poitier.
We got 94 years out of Sidney.
94 years.
94.
Yeah.
He was a beacon of grace for all of those years, too. Sidney was one of those brothers, right? Harry Belafonte is considered the organizer amongst the actors, amongst in the entertainment field that brought entertainers into the civil rights movement with their resources and with their platform. The first to respond to Harry was Sidney Poitier, right? Yeah. And in every role, almost everything that he did, he was a beacon of black dignity and a stellar actor on so many fronts. The dimensions of his range were important. Folks are on social media now talking about all of their favorite Poitier films, right? I'm glad you raised him up because he was one of our long distance runners, and he was a beacon for dignity and for so many years on his run.
And you know, a lot of people, clearly everybody knows Denzel Washington, and everyone knows the types of roles that Denzel Washington has played: fierce, strong, prideful, right? Like just a an iconic figure. But I always looked at Denzel Washington as the heir of Sidney Poitier, right? Like as in, it was Sidney Poitier who was like that dude that represented this, like the hope of the civil rights movement, progress in the civil rights movement, the possibilities of tomorrow, right? Like, and a lot of the roles that you're seeing him on YouTube and Facebook when they're showing up, a lot of Sidney Poitier roles, it really is like Sidney Poitier was to be the future of Black people within this country, the possibilities of what we could have, as in people who were guided, when we guide our own destiny, right? When, like, what is it, can we imagine ourselves in terms of free? I always thought, like growing up, seeing Sidney Poitier films and seeing how my parents or grandparents reacted to Sidney Poitier, it was like when he was on, you stopped everything, you watched it, because you knew that wasn't just good for you. You knew that was a Sidney Poitier role was good for the community. And you think that that's how he did what he did, right? Yeah. So
he was a great brother. Yeah, he was a great brother. Loved his work.
Now, did you talk about Lonnie Guinier?
No, tell us. So no,
Lonnie Guinier passed away today too.
Did not know. Wow.
Yeah. And Lonnie Guinier, brilliant civil rights attorney, academic, out of both Harvard and UPenn. I think she was one of the first tenured Black woman faculty at Harvard. At their law school.
Did not get appointed to the bench because Obama passed her by.
Was it? Oh, possibly, right? Like I know that Bill Clinton.
He put that other woman on the bench in his first term.
Okay.
Passed her by.
Right. But she actually passed away of Alzheimer's disease, so she probably had been sick for a little bit. I don't know what the stage was there. The person who really passed her by was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, when she was supposed to be attorney general, or at least.
But Obama had an opportunity to correct that by putting the first Black woman on that bench. He had an opportunity to correct that.
Right, but I don't know necessarily what her, I have no idea what her health was like there, because I mean, she did pass away of Alzheimer's disease recently.
Got it, John. But let's not make excuses for Obama, brother. Please.
Fair enough, but just pointing out just the reality too, right? Like
I got it, John. But we ought not make excuses for no brother bypassing a sister or a brother when they got the opportunity to give them that opportunity, right? We just had Bonnie Coleman Watson on talking about we need to be thinking about a Black agenda summit. And Zaid just talked about a Black United Front. Hell, man, we need to start thinking about Black people first. And we damn sure don't want to be making no excuses for a Black man not giving another Black woman or a Black man a position, right? Well, and that's what we're talking about. What we're saying, we know what Clinton did, but if you get an opportunity at some point to give a Black person an opportunity to be on a bench that they can't get fired from and make decisions that are going to affect the lives of Black people for the rest of their life. Come on, man.
I think that might be true if you're talking about like a different scenario, right? Like, but I know we go back and forth on this all the time when you're like, hey, they should put a person there who is Black. And I love Lonnie Guinier, and yeah, she should have been chosen if her health was right. Like they know a lot of, like, again, she had a long-term illness. But there are other people he could have chosen, right? But I always say that, and we had this back and forth, I never say choose a Black person, choose a person who's for our agenda, because a lot of times when they say choose a Black woman, choose or Black man, they choose the one they want. It's not
John,
the one.
I absolutely agree, and I don't think there's nobody on screen with us right now on the show. We understand every brother ain't a brother. We understand every sister ain't a sister. We're clear on that. But what we're saying is we're saying Lonnie Guinier was not one of them.
No, true, but we also don't know what her health was like during that time.
But John, let's don't see. You keep saying the but. right? The hell with
It's
the
true.
butt.
Well, because
Right.
no, but Ed, two things. First,
No, John.
that's not even about
Listen
money.
to what I'm saying,
it is
brother.
about. No,
John,
push back.
John,
Push
I'm saying
back.
the hell with
It's
the
not
butt.
just about. It's not just about that. I'm saying that yes, the thing should not be black person because
John, you made your point.
Elizabeth Warren
You
is
made
vice
your,
president.
John,
Yep,
you made
we
your,
went through
you
this
made
with
your
the vice
point.
president, right?
You
We
made
went
your
through this.
point. You made your point, and I agreed by saying we recognize that every brother ain't a brother and every sister ain't a sister. We
But
clear
by
that.
making
We're
those
saying
calls,
Ronnie Grenier ain't one, and we're saying let's get rid of the butt on her and just clearly say that when Obama had an opportunity to clarify that and make it right, he chose to put a white woman on the bench first. Right? Let's just be clear about that. Right, and we don't stop the question whether or not her agenda was for black people, or stop the question whether her health was what it was. The hell with that, man. At some point, we just got to be black, man. And the hell we're trying to intellectualize every ride, right? We've got.
But I think when we don't do that, we end up with what we had in the vice presidency.
That's why Dr. King said when we were at some point in his campaign for integration, he began to say, "Oh, we entering into a burning goddamn house," right?
Right.
Because he recognized where we were going. Listen,
as I said before, that's the mistake I think we always make. We disagree on that, right? We disagree because I think that when you say that first, that gets us like somebody who put black people in prison, because we're not the one. We say you choose, right? But we don't. We need to just say people, right? On that.
No.
The people that we want.
You say people, I'm gonna say black people, bro.
Well, it depends on which one. Because Elizabeth Warren versus Kamala Harris, I don't know, right? Who would you choose? Someone who said that we're going to do something for black people, or someone who said I will not do anything for black people? That's all I'm saying. It's a little more complicated because they use that against us. So I know that we are getting ready to go into that next segment, and we always get a little heat going on when we have this conversation.
Oh, that's good stuff.
Conversation.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Right. Right.
Good stuff. So Jonathan, Ed is keeping your chops up.
Yeah, and I think it's mutual. I think it's mutual because we had this conversation around the vice presidency, and I was feeling like, no, don't do it, don't do it. They did it, right? I'm like, Elizabeth Warren is running up and down, going, here are different policies that actually will help black people, and I will advocate for them. Here all they are. But in our community, we're like, nope, got to be a black woman. When we leave it open like that, always an issue.
Yeah, well taken.
Let me head out, y'all.
On both sides.
Catch
you
all
right, Rhino?
Yeah, man, I got to run.
Well, who you featuring tomorrow on your
absolutely.
Your ride?
Yeah, definitely tomorrow, twitch.tv/Rhino CMZ at 3 p.m. for the Saturday Shake Up with CMZ at 3. Check me out. No special deal. I might be getting into some jazz breaks. I don't know. I might do some jazz breaks tomorrow. Yeah, so we'll see what's up.
I got to figure out.
But again, that's twitch.tv/Rhino CMZ, 3 p.m.
Right on. 3 o'clock, y'all. 3 o'clock. Ride, Rhino, ride.
All right.
Absolutely.
Peace, y'all.
All right, beloved.
All right, man.
I'm sending Payne the link. I forgot to send it to him, John.
Oh no.
Okay, I'm about to say.
He's always on time. He's always on
while
time.
While we're waiting on that to happen, I just want to look for something as possible for next week. He hasn't gotten back to me, but we've got, unfortunately, a new case in terms of police brutality in Patterson. It's a young man. His name is Thelonious McKnight. Got killed on the 29th of December, from what I'm gathering. Right, and it looks like from the community side, another hands up, don't shoot kind of case. The police line is that we got this guy with a gun, and it was an exchange, and they had to take him down. They're two very different stories, and unfortunately, the mayor of Patterson, who tries to play both sides of the fence, appears to be on the wrong side of the question. Patterson has had some horrible problems with their policing in the black and brown community in that town for some years.
Right.
When we were trying to get the independent prosecutors bill passed, got it through both the Assembly and the Senate here in Jersey, right? Murphy was still reluctant to sign. He was just afraid. He was afraid of the police unions. He was just afraid. And Jameek Mallory gets killed in Patterson. We go out to Patterson. I had that. I took a Larry out to Patterson, and the police attacked the demonstration that we were at and wound up arresting two of the leaders of the march. So I'm trying to get hold of Zella Imani from Black Lives Matter, Patterson, to agree to come on and be with us next Friday, so he can unpack the new dimensions and the new challenges of that case, right? So this thing keeps marching on, unfortunately, with police acting badly for our folks in our community.
Right, and I know Patterson has a history of that. Like what you said, it seems like they've had some cases over the last few years that you have talked about, that we've talked about on the show, actually. And you're saying that there's the police say that he was armed, and the community saying he was not armed. Like, can you break that down?
I don't know. I don't know much more. There's been very little. The incident happened on the 29th. We didn't get any press on it until like the just a couple of days ago.
Okay.
So we're still unpacking a lot, but there's been some protests out there. The eyewitness account is very different from the police account, right? And there doesn't appear to be any video footage. We wish there were, but that's
so in other words, so here's the thing I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask. So the police that are supposed to have body cameras didn't have body cameras on. The body cameras were turned off, and they're saying, "Believe me." Is that what's going on?
I don't think Patterson has body cameras yet at all.
Wow.
Right? So that's an issue. But where you're going with your question is important to address, right? Because one of the things that we're trying to do is to get Governor Murphy to veto that backwards bill that the police pushed through the assembly through a Nuke-based legislator, by the way, right? That gives them the access to their body camera footage before they do their reports. And what's the point of having the body camera in the first place if you're not going to use it for transparency? So we tell everybody to call and write the governor and tell him to veto that backwards bill, not to amend it or to make it a conditional veto. We don't want any conditions on it. We want to get rid of that, and we want all those that package of real police reform bills to be pushed through the Assembly and the Senate, and for him to sign, like the Civilian Review Board, like the Police Transparency Board, like the bill banning chokeholds, like the bill ending qualified immunity. That's what we want. That's what's going to make the difference, not these wishy-washy compromising bills that kiss the police union in the behind, right? And pardon me for talking like that, my brother Congressman. I'm going off just as you come.
Welcome.
How are you?
You got to have some edge in these conversations.
Timing's everything.
Before you get started, Congressman Payne, my bad.
That's all right.
I'm working with two phones these days.
It's all good.
I'm like, I got phones all over the damn place. I thought I told John, I thought I did it already. And I'm like, Congressman Payne texting me, and I ain't even sending the damn link.
That's right. Hey, listen, for full disclosure, I on my way home from dialysis, I stopped on the bridge over here over on Bergen Street and got a steak and take. And so man, I've been doing that for the last half hour. Man, I turned around. I said, "Oh shoot!" And it was 5 to 8. Man, shoot! I was about to roll over. After you eat that sandwich, you roll over and lay down.
Yeah, that's
Thanksgiving dinner, right?
And then I remembered. I said, "Oh no, the Payne report."
Yep.
So it's all good. How y'all doing?
Good,
doing
man.
all right.
How you doing?
We're doing all right.
You sound good, man.
Oh yeah. I feel
For it to
good.
be 1 year later, you sounding good.
Yeah, man. Quite an experience. Fortunately, like I said, I wasn't actually on the Hill when it happened, so I was blessed. I wasn't on the Hill at the time when it started. So then once it started, I just sat back down on my couch and watched.
I remember.
But, it's really been traumatic. To listen to my colleagues, talk about it and recreate, what they felt like and how they're doing a year later, really, really troubling. It's a sad state. I mean, some of them are never going to be, never get over this. And, the trauma that they, that they experienced last year, at the hands of that mob, has stayed with them. And, it's just unfortunate, really an unfortunate situation.
Yep. Well, listen, y'all, let me just say that, of course, the Congressman just popped in, but y'all know if it is the first Friday, it is 8 o'clock. Y'all know it's time for the Payne Report with our beloved brother, the one and only, the beloved one and only, I might say, Congressman Donald M. Payne Jr.
All right.
My brother. Hey, Congressman, listen, man, I just want to say this right up front, man, because I said this to Bonnie Watson Coleman earlier. She was on the show in the beginning.
Oh, you had my sister on.
Yep, she was on earlier.
Good session with her. You'd have loved it.
It was dope, man. And I said this to her. I said, listen, I said, had them folks got to the Congressional Black Caucus members, they really might have started something in this country. And she agreed, brother. She said, she would not have wanted to see what might have happened if they had gotten to some of y'all.
Very true. Very true.
Because I think they get it wrong, man. I think at the end of the day, a lot of these folks from whence we come, and they don't know our struggle, And so, when you coming in there and you coming from that particular perspective, I mean, at the end of the day, we trying to go along to get along, but don't get us twisted.
And as I talked about, people being traumatized, our folks live with trauma all our lives. So, that's a good point. I would not have liked to seen if people in this country thought that we were harmed in any way, what it would have been.
Yep. Because they, I mean, you got to, and she said it, when you talk about all that we've gone through to get the right to vote and everything that was going on. And if you had harmed, one of them elders that was there in the chamber that day, I mean, just think about it, man. And I reminded her of what happened when Dr. King was assassinated, how this country almost got torn up. It had not have been for certain entertainers like James Brown to calm black folk down,
Absolutely.
Ain't no telling what might happen.
The aftermath of Dr. King's assassination led to the Black Panther Party's largest growth spurt, right? In terms of organization, a lot of young folks, you want us to be nonviolent, but you're gonna kill Dr. King?
Right.
That was the straw that broke the back for a lot of young folks, and they went into the Black Panther Party. And of course, the Black Panther Party replaces Dr. King as becoming the number one internal threat to the security of the United States. And COINTEL came full force at them. And we're still dealing with some of the repercussions of that. Right. So yeah, it's that's what I mean. I've had to say, and I don't enjoy this, and people think that when you're associated with certain stances and certain positions, right, that it's a glamorous thing. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right.
You think going to prison for standing up for your humanity is glamorous?
Right.
You're losing your life. Getting killed for standing up for something that's right and just is glamorous.
Right.
It destroys that traumatizes our whole community. But when I've said that, our young men may need to prepare themselves to perhaps have to fight these folks all over again. That's real stuff because they're preparing.
Yeah.
Openly.
Listen, any
Rittenhouse did not fall from the sky. He came from his mother, who brought him across state line with that weapon, dropped him off.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing his duty according to their notion of white privilege and was taken care of like a grandson by the judge when he went to court and got off.
Right.
That was not an aberration. That's America.
Yeah, you can see who they care about and who they don't. That's for sure. They make it clear. They definitely make it clear. No hiding that fact.
You know, that's why she was saying how crazy some of those people are in Congress, Congressman Payne. You know, some of the Republicans. You know, and you know, and I was telling her you talk about it all the time. And but the thing is, just imagine though, had they been able to penetrate that, and they wound up getting to say a Congressman Clyburn and murdered him, or something like that because they disagreed with him supporting you know, the president. And just think if that had occurred. I mean, you know, what would have happened in this country? And I don't know. And I said to her, I don't know if that was their goal, right? If they wanted to start that level of a race war, or you know, create those kind of things. But Zaid was mentioning Antifa and all of that. But you got to think about it. We don't know what was in these people's mind, right?
Well,
But we do know it was a total attack on democracy. And you just think what that was.
Can somebody tell me where Antifa is and what it is? Because this is an aberration to me. I don't know who Antifa is. It's another conjured up notion that they've created in order to you know, keep us off balance and you know, and having an excuse.
That's right.
An excuse to go after people. The Antifa. Now all of a sudden Antifa was there that day. I ain't met nobody from Antifa yet.
When the Antifa argument is the prelude to the critical race history argument.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, right.
But I think it's also one of those things that makes me I'm probably more scared of the violence that could really happen as a result of what they're doing in these local elections and these local districts than what happened. As in, if they actually succeed in legally erasing votes from Philadelphia or Milwaukee or Detroit, as they're set up to do, right? Like, or in Atlanta, right? Where it seems like they're creating laws so that they can legally disenfranchise a large swath of Black voters.
Right.
I'm kind of more concerned about like when that happens, because I don't know if people in our communities know that our votes are about to be erased, and I think that Congresswoman Watson Coleman was also like, I don't think people really get the actual danger that they're already taking away our voting rights. Like literally, they can make whole swaths of Black and brown voters disappear now from laws that have already been passed. Does that scare you in terms of the violence that can come from that?
Well, first of all, I think that we're going to be able to combat this whole movement to erase swaths of people. We're just not going to let it happen. And you know, it's incumbent upon us to stay vigilant and to continue to push back with respect to these type notions. I mean, look at what they did. You know, look at what happened in Georgia. Now, if there's not an example of where they've tried to curtail the right to vote, and all it's done is amplify it and make Georgia the swing state in order for Democrats and people of color to be in the lead and make the decisions on which direction this country is going. So I think it's a lot more difficult than you know. It's possible, and they're definitely trying. But you know, I kind of tend to have some faith, you know, in good triumphing over evil. With respect to these type things, you know, when Trump came into power, you know, that year, January 20th of 2017, I guess it was.
Yep.
And you know, after a month or so, I was really finally saw, you know, this notion that I had heard all my life, you know, democracy is fragile. I really saw it. I was wondering if this country was about to fall apart and go in a totally different direction. But what happened was, February was rough and March was a little unsettling, but then the Supreme Court kicked in and different other lower courts kicked in, and there's just some mechanism in this country which are amazing. Like, in spite of the opportunity and the audacity of people in trying to do certain things, that there are mechanisms in this country that circumvent it, and in the end win out. So I was really concerned in February, but by the time we got to May and June, I felt comfortable again.
But here's a question. There's a recent article in The Atlantic by Barton Gellman saying Trump's next coup has already begun. And he really details, and this has been going on all over the news as well, he really details what happened in Georgia after that. Like, because of what Trump did and he lost and the Supreme Court voted against him, and all those really thin checks, like the Republican Secretary of State who was like, nah, you lost, right? The Republican governor who was like, nah, you lost, right? Even in Michigan, the people who were Republican who could certify votes were like, nah, you lost, right? It seems like all of those people that you're talking about, they have actually been replaced and the laws have been changed. So that now in Georgia, if the Republican state legislature couldn't say, hey, Secretary of State, hey, people who are controlling the votes in Fulton County where Atlanta is, we will replace the head, we will replace local judgment, and we Republican state legislature will determine which votes are valid and which won't. It seems like all of those checks and balances that you talked about that barely got us through, all of those have been erased.
Well, barely, we got through, all right? We got through. So barely, or, barely, that counts in tiddlywinks, barely we got through. And so we just need to continue to drive in that. Look, John, we weren't supposed to get through this time, but we barely got through. So I just have a confidence in the institutions and the overall moral of people in this country to do the right thing. Yeah, we're gonna have to fight like hell. They've got control over quite a few state houses. But I mean, that hasn't stopped us before, and we just have to continue to battle it. We're not lost yet now. Let's not get defeatist, yet. We're not lost yet. And we're going to continue to fight it. And there are going to be laws on the federal level that we create in order to circumvent some of the states' rights. It's very difficult to circumvent states' rights. That's one thing I learned going into Congress. States have great power. And the federal government in certain areas has no jurisdiction at all. It's all about states' rights, and that is something that can be troubling at times. But I refuse to look at this in a defeatist scenario. We're going to keep fighting. We've been fighting. We're going to keep fighting. And we're going to keep pushing. Look, I mean, what's the young lady's name in Georgia?
Oh, Stacey Abrams.
She's probably going to end up being governor.
Right, and that's probably going to be the epicenter of all of this, in huge amount of fights, because you have the new laws that have been passed, and you have the organizing of Stacey Abrams. And they're all going to meet in Georgia. Probably maybe one of the most expensive races in the history of the United States, and that so many people feel so much is at stake in Georgia now.
Yeah.
Well, and remember, it's not just Stacey Abrams. Remember, you got that Senate seat that's also up in Georgia, right? So,
Right.
I mean, you got those two important races. That's why everybody's saying these midterms are going to be also
Very critical.
important.
Yeah, we've got this challenge for us. I don't know if you talked to Ms. Watson Coleman about it, but we got some challenges too. With respect to holding on to the House.
Yeah,
I'm
Yeah.
I'm hoping that that's that's the really bad thing about the Biden agenda not being able to get through is we need some wins to point to for people to have confidence in us to continue in the leadership.
But Congressman Payne, that's what Larry was just talking about. He was saying that what Biden is going to have to do, he's in order to get people riled up in these states like Georgia, he's going to have to use executive order to get some things done, like Trump did, right?
Yeah.
Particularly for them young people in Georgia that they're going to need to come out to vote. Larry said he can get that student debt canceled, or at least a major portion of it, by using executive order, and then at least them young people will feel like John says all the time, pay them kids like they've gotten something, because those are the very people that Stacey is going to need. Those are the very people that the senator is going to need. All those folks who came out to push Georgia over for Biden, they don't do that, and he doesn't use executive order, and y'all lose the House. I mean, that's the beginning of the end.
Right. Well, we'll see what happens. I'm sure, brighter people than myself are in those rooms, working these things out. So hopefully, that's the case. But
aren't there several congresspersons? Donna's finally time. I was wondering where she was. You definitely need to get her, right?
I thought she had the night off.
Coming to go kisses with Big Diva.
She only come when the Payne report is on.
She didn't get
you know how the beginning of the year when you get all your days back, you start taking off. You know how
right? Right away,
Happy
right?
New Year. Yeah, you take
Happy
all your
New Year,
days. Happy New Year's. Sorry about that, guys.
There are several seats in the Congress where several Democratic congresspersons are retiring, right?
Right.
What do you have any notes you want us to make of those seats and how we need to support folks in those areas?
And before you give our love to Bobby Rush, that's your people. He's leaving.
He's one of them. Yeah, he's one of them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No. He's earned his retirement. He, God bless him. He's been a warrior out there. Going way back. So I'm glad to see him, sitting down and taking a breath and reflecting on the great career that he's had and, enjoying himself, in his retirement. So that's what I wish for him. He's been a good brother, been a real mentor to me as usual. I'm like the kid of the Congress. I'm everybody's son. That's kind of how they look at me. I'm like all of their charge. They're picking it up after my father. So Mr. Rush has definitely been one of those people that has looked out after me, and so I'm gonna miss him. But just delighted that he's gonna have the opportunity, to relax and enjoy, and probably work more, with his congregation back in Chicago and in his church family and do those things. But we're identifying candidates already that the Black Caucus are going to support, and we're looking at all of that right now. So as people bow out, there are definitely candidates and people that the CBC has identified in order to fill those positions. So.
And Congressman, I guess most of them, you would hope that they mentored somebody to hopefully that has been there, that they can name and say, hey, I would love to see this person, but the people have to want it. But hopefully there's somebody that they have mentored.
Yeah, well, with respect to Marsha Fudge, she was the one that, kind of endorsed Chantel Brown and said that, she should be her successor. And so we rallied around her, and Marilyn Strickland in Washington State, first African American from Washington State, the former mayor of Seattle. She came in last term, and so we had quite a few new ones. And some of these situations, like in North Carolina, is really terrible. You talk about gerrymandering a state, boy, they gerrymandered that state so poorly that they pushed G.K. Butterfield out. So he's retiring because they just totally messed his district up and, made it more Republican than Democrat. He can't even recognize it anymore. So he's going to retire. And what they do a lot of times is they'll push two Democrats into one seat. Hopefully in Houston that doesn't happen, where you have Al Green and Sheila Jackson Lee, and we're hoping that they don't force them into one district. It's unfortunate. That's another strategy they use to get rid of us or minimize our impact.
Vote. Mm-hmm. 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 So as we get ready, because we're 22 is here.
Yep.
One of the things that Congresswoman raised, and we'll run this by you also, is that there's a need for a meeting or a summit of some kind. We're getting ready for the 50th anniversary of the Black Political Convention here in Newark, but she raised the question of the need for a statewide Black Agenda Summit, right? What are your thoughts on that as we move into this very pivotal year that is 22?
Absolutely, that's a no-brainer. That goes without saying. I mean, it's clearly we should have some direction in the state on what we want to see in terms of leadership and moving forward in the state. Yeah, absolutely, I concur. Got no issue with that.
So would that be like a revival of the big Black issues, or was that more national, or was that statewide? When Councilman Donald Tucker, when he used to be over the organization.
Vic is still here. Vic is still around.
But at the level when Councilman Tucker was over it, it was a really robust.
Right.
It was, yeah. But was that state or national?
That was state.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that was like really, really robust. When you hear people refer to Vic and days of Councilman Tucker and how that was like the go-to for the state.
Well, even the organization that my father kind of fostered, the African American Alliance. Where leaders from around the state met, once or twice a year and talked about issues that were pertaining to to our community. Senator Rice and I had led some discussions like that over the course of the past 3 or 4 years, and once Ms. Watson Coleman came on the into the Congress, I naturally invited her to be part of the leadership of that event. So I mean, it's like I say all the time, we're great starters, but our follow through is lacking. And we we're all great. We got a million things we want to accomplish and get done. But we have a meeting, and then 800 people are there. And then we had the next meeting, and 600 are there, and then the next meeting 350, and our follow through needs to be stronger and lacking, and the longevity of our the longevity of what we're trying to accomplish needs to be fortified and continued. So we're great starters. We got terrible follow through.
That's absolutely correct, right? We and we seem to also be folks who only respond to things, when it's in the news, right? When things happen. So, we can get started on something, on
episodic organized.
and then right. And then, and that's another thing that Congresswoman Coleman was talking about when she said that, we need to organize, right? When she laid out, we need to be registering to vote. We need to be organizing people to go out and vote. All those things that she laid out. But at the end of the day, like you said, Brother Congressman, I mean, we don't have the follow through. And unfortunately, remember, the one thing that those folks had in the 60s, and just think about what they did with the bus boycott, right? They had tremendous follow through.
Right. Absolutely.
Nobody thought they would last that long.
That's the example that is so seldomly studied that we so need to be lifting up and making more operational in our capacity.
Absolutely. They thought they would wait them out. And guess what? They couldn't wait them out. We had to finally give in.
And just think about, all of the technology that we now have, Congressman, that they didn't have.
Right.
So Ed, maybe the thing that we need to do is consolidate our efforts. Like, we know that Pop every Saturday registers to vote. Maybe we need to look at what organizations are doing something continuously, and instead of everybody trying to, like, maybe Pop is the vote organizer, somebody else does something else. You know what I'm saying? Because Pop continually does do, register people to vote every week.
Oh yeah. Now there's a consistent organization. Absolutely.
So what's your take? Let me ask
you, Zay, what did you think about last night?
I was going to ask you. We did a whole session on last night earlier. I wanted to ask you about last night. I thought it was good.
They were talking about you a minute ago, Congressman.
Oh yeah,
you held it down.
Yeah, I got there kind of late, and I always hate following Baraka. It's like the anti, you have the crescendo, the orchestra, and then the big finish, and then here I come like doo doo.
No, you got good marks. You got good marks.
Thank you, brother.
It was good. It was, it was a cold night. It looked like, the anecdote of the stuff that we're talking about. It looked like a progressive, the makings of a progressive united front and the progressive united agenda. It was multi-generational, it was multi-ethnic and multiracial.
Right.
It was intergenerational. I'm saying multi-generational, intergenerational. Labor, women, Black folks, everybody who's supposed to be at the table, that's supposed to reflect the energy and the real core identity of what the Democratic Party is supposed to look like at its historic best.
Right.
At its historic best.
Right.
Right. That's what that looked like. And I was, one of the guests that we had coming on after Congressman Watson was the organizer, Sue Altman, a young, fiery young woman who's now running.
Oh, you had Sue? Yeah, Sue.
Yeah. So it was good. We had a chance really to unpack it quite a bit. But the thing is, what is our organized response, right? and she laid out the importance of several key districts in Jersey that needs some shoring up in terms of the Democratic side. And of course, Larry, laid out the whole question of voter mobilization, voter education, and voter mobilization. Coming into the new year, and why that's going to be so important. But it was a good session. It was a good session. I was very proud of what they did.
Yeah, I'm glad. I guess my my counterpart heard that I was there, and I was speaking, so she found her way there.
Yeah.
At the end.
He's talking about Congressman Mickey Sherrill. She closed it out.
Yeah. Dude, Payne was there? Oh, I gotta go.
Well, at least she
Things that make you go,
Mm-hmm.
She inherited my
part of the district.
My district, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. So the 10th district will now comprise some interesting towns. I inherited Verona. I inherited Caldwell, and I inherited Essex Fells.
Wow.
3 towns that I know I'm going to be explaining. No, really, I'm the congressman. No, for really, get on the ground, spread them, So I look forward to those interactions.
Fresh challenges. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And in Union County, I inherited Kenilworth, Garwood, and Cranford.
Same thing.
So,
same thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, who is helping whom in this thing.
Yeah.
So I got all of West Orange, and I got all of Union Township, which those 2 aren't bad.
I like what's going on in West Orange.
Yeah.
But you didn't lose anything. You gained. You didn't lose anything.
Well, yeah. Okay. Let's be positive.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you didn't lose some of your, the Essex, the Hudsons, you know what I mean?
Well, they took me out of They took me out of Bayonne.
Oh man!
And they shrunk my my piece of Jersey City as well.
Wow!
And they took me out of Linden, which was one of my strongholds, and reduced me in that area and took Rawway. Mm-hmm. So they took Rawway and Linden out of my district, and gave me Kenilworth and Garwood and Cranford. Thank you.
Yeah, Those are the towns. I grew up in Union County, right between Plainfield and Roselle. Those are the towns that we had to drive carefully.
Yes.
Yes. All of that. Kenilworth. This is years ago now, right? I don't want to put a stigma on the town right now because it also has a very working class history. Kenilworth was once upon a time the base, the national headquarters for the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh,
back
wonderful.
In the 30s, So
just what I needed. Just what I needed.
I said the 30s now, we hope it's in a very different place now, but it's a new frontier that nothing stays the same.
Right.
Nothing stays the same. So we got to stay sharp.
That was 90 years ago, right? 90 years.
Yeah. We got to identify those new faces and those new voices that are looking for, what we need.
Absolutely.
And put them to work,
Absolutely. So no, I look forward to the challenge and, learning the populations in those communities and the things that they, need and desire. Some of them are pretty Republican. So I don't know, how much they're going to enjoy having a Democrat as their member of Congress. But, I'm going to do the job. And, that's what I That's what I was elected to do. So, I'm going to serve the people of the 10th district and to the best of my ability. So that's all.
And how do you formally transition? Do you meet with the previous representative and they say, hey, this is some of the concerns? Is there a formal transition?
Great question.
Not really. Although there could be. I have to even see who had those, those towns prior to me. I would think maybe Ms. Malinowski in the Union County piece, and I think Mikey Sherrill had those several towns that I inherited. So
I was thinking, like, on those same lines, Donna's always talking about civic lessons. And I thought this was a really good civics lesson, right? Like, you're an incumbent, you've been in Congress for many years, and your voters changed.
Right.
So is that common? Is that happens every
10 years?
The census. It comes back to the census.
Yeah.
So every 10 years, you actually, like, every congressperson ends up getting new voters?
Probably, yeah.
And so
districts don't normally stay exactly the same because the Constitution set up that there are 435 members of Congress, no more, no less. So what happens is the population of the United States is divided by 435. And so that's what, the number that comes out for a congressional seat. So, as the population grows, the number of people in the congressional district grows. This year is 700,000 people in a congressional district. And so, it's 435 districts of 700,000 people across the country, give or take, a few thousand. So, but that's the medium number, in a district. So, the district definitely has to change because, there might not, where your district lies now, you might not be able to capture 700,000. There might only be, 685,000 in the way your district is constructed right now. So they have to figure out where to get that other 25,000 people, into your district. So the whole map changes, every 10 years. So at one time I had Elizabeth, Elizabeth, I haven't had Elizabeth. I haven't had Elizabeth since I've been in Congress now. So that changed 10 years ago. Prior to that, Elizabeth was in the 10th district.
Right.
But creating a more
right on Broad Street. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Creating a more Hispanic district, Elizabeth went into Albio Series district, which took in Ironbound and, Jersey's, the Latino parts of Jersey City and Latino parts of Hudson County. And so, I had primarily the African-American areas, with respect to population. So, that's how it changes every 10 years.
And also that change is to respect diversity, like in New Jersey, if you have Democrats who control the state house, when they do their apportionment, they want to make sure they have racial representation, almost like the opposite of Texas that got more seats, but then they cut out a lot of the Hispanic districts because I think there were a lot more Latinos in Texas now, and that's why they got more seats, but there was more Latino representation. How does that work?
Well, the population, it's where the populations are, they shift. So, people move out of, different states. Like prior to this census, we didn't lose a seat, but the prior two censuses, we lost a member of Congress. So this time we did not lose a seat, but New York lost a seat. I think Connecticut lost a seat.
Ooh.
So,
Okay.
it's as the population shifts, that's how Texas gets more, or Florida, or Georgia, South Carolina. So it depends on where the population is where they shift the number of seats that a state has.
Now, the question I was asking about Texas was that the Texas population grew largely because of Latino voters. But when they did the apportionment in the state, Latino voters got no more representation. There were more white congressional districts. How does that work? Like, how is it that you're able to have a district in New Jersey where their Black people have representation, or serious Latinos have representation, but in Texas there are more Latinos, and that's the reason why Texas got more seats, because there was a growth in the Latino population, but there's no representation. Another civics lessons, another tribute to Donna, civics lesson. How does that work? Where New Jersey has representation for Blacks and Latinos inside of their districts, but in Texas, it seems like the opposite.
Well, because we're Democrats and we believe in representation, and they're Republicans and they don't.
So
it's very simple.
So it's really about those local offices in the state, right? Like, as in
the state legislatures. The state legislatures control that. And the Republicans a long time ago realized that and used that as a strategy, which is why they have focused on controlling state legislatures for just these reasons.
So do you think that we need to focus more on a lot of those local politics, like state legislatures, et cetera, like around the country?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's where all the decisions are made. And, based on your example there, you see what happens when, and even with our discussions about the voting laws and the changing of the laws. I mean, same people that are, trying to keep people from voting are the same people that are, reapportioning these districts to look the way they want them to look.
Right. And Texas is a real battleground for that. That's right. What do you think about Beto O'Rourke running for governor?
I think he's a good guy. I sat next to Beto. Beto and I were fairly close in Congress, and we sat next to each other in Homeland Security. And actually, when we had our orientation, we came in together, and we got very close because he had his family there, and his wife got ill, and so Beto is trying to feed these 3 little kids, from 5 to 2, and so I saw him, and my experience with triplets, I went over. I said, let me help this guy out. So I helped him, take care of the kids that morning, and we became very close. Beto O'Rourke would be an incredible governor. Good, bright, smart young man. Heart is in the right place, and he's doing it for the right reasons. He would be a phenomenal governor.
Yeah, Stacey and Beto. Those would be 2 heavy wins if we could get them.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things you got to give Beto credit for is that he just don't give up, right? I mean,
right.
He keep going. I mean, every time he see there's an opportunity, and particularly when he doesn't see anyone else stepping up, I mean, he steps up.
Well, I was a little disappointed when he left the Congress, because I thought that there were opportunities for him there.
I agree
to move up in leadership, but he got the calling back in the state and wanted to go back there. But I had a couple conversations with him, trying to reason with him why he should stay. But he was committed to it, and he made great points. So I deferred, I backed off. So he was doing it for the right reasons, and he had, it wasn't just blind ambition. you know, he had a vision, and just a class A guy. He's just, you know, the kind of person you really can respect and love. He's just a great human being. He really is.
Yeah, he definitely comes off that way.
Yeah.
Congressman, who's the previous senator, former governor that ran against President Obama from Massachusetts? Massachusetts. Who ran against President Obama the second time?
Oh,
Wasn't the guy who put the money in the freezer, was it?
No, this is what you would call who we basically mirrored the health plan after.
Oh yeah.
Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
Mitt
Romney. Do you have the opportunity to work with him? How do you find him? He doesn't work across the aisle?
No, I haven't. You know, he's in the Senate, so I don't have very much exposure to him.
So y'all have you don't do any work with the Senate?
He left Massachusetts.
No, he's in Texas. Where's he in Texas? Where's he at?
Utah.
Yeah.
He's in Utah now. Yeah.
Yeah, but I know he's in the Senate. I'm just wondering because he was one of the Republicans who kind of seemed like he was trying to work across the aisle.
Yeah, well, he didn't like Trump, so it kind of lent to kind of side with us on different issues. That's what that was. He really was. Trump was very disparaging of him, and so he didn't appreciate Trump. So that's where that came from. It was just
not that he cared about us. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. He just happened to be on the same side. We didn't like Trump. He didn't like Trump. So we kind of ended up on the same side of issues at times. Mm-hmm. Not very many, but
Mm-hmm. And I think that there was a time, I think he went to during the George Floyd protest, him and he led a delegation that marched in those protests. So, but he's also one of the Republicans who's now silent on a lot of the things that are going on with Trump and with the insurrection, So I think that one of those things is like, well, where are you at when our democracy is actually in danger from the person who you don't even respect? So he's been pretty silent as of late.
Okay.
Oh.
yeah. So I just threw that out there.
Yeah.
Answer that. You're like, yeah, he's our friend sometimes, but not the others. I was like, yeah, probably sometimes because he's been pretty silent lately. So I was kind of.
Well, I didn't even say friend. I just said, on the same side of issue. So
right.
I wouldn't even characterize it as a friend. It just, he just disagreed with Trump, and 9 times out of 10, that's where we are. So we just ended up on the same side of the issue. I wouldn't call it a friendship.
Fair.
But what's interesting is the way they all can get in lockstep with one another.
They sure can.
Yeah.
With all that madness.
Right.
They close ranks when they want to.
Yeah,
right.
and just that thing you talked about earlier, Zaid, when you talked about Amiri with a Black United Front, they got a Republican United Front.
That's right.
Yeah.
A backwards one, but they're united.
Yeah. I mean, so when you saw that none of them showed up yesterday, and Cheney and her father was the only one that showed up, right, on the Republican side, all them folks, are in lockstep. Now, why can't the Democrats do that?
Well, you know what? Well, because we're not like them. First of all, that's one of the main reasons. I mean, to be like them, I don't know if I'd want to be like them, but that's not saying why we can't get together. But what it is they've got 3 things that they care about.
Mm-hmm.
No new taxes, the Supreme Court, and abortion. And they've got those three things that they drive. Our tent is the Black Panthers. Our tent is LGBTQ. Our tent is the Blue Dog Democrats. Our tent is the Progressive Democrats. Our tent takes in a large swath of people with different issues.
Well taken.
When they are laser focused on three things that they don't like and don't want and want to see happen. So our tent is so big that, corralling everybody into that tent and getting them to focus on, and that's the thing that we've been working on now, this parallel tracks. Like if your thing is housing, then fine, I'll support you in your housing, but you got to support me on my LGBTQ. You can't just say, well, no, I'm just dealing with housing. You got to support me on my issues. And that's what the Republicans have. No taxes, federal judgeships, and anti-abortion. And they all agree. So they come into the room starting out way, way much further along than we are. And it's, it's unfortunate the things that they stand for, but they do stand for them and are in lockstep. We've got to figure out how we, the strength is in our numbers,
right?
But it's like what we saw last night, Zay.
Yes.
That keeping that together.
Yes.
Is everybody got up. They had some up. It was some other issue.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that and maybe that's what we need to do. We need to figure out three things that all of us can agree on, even irrespective of where we are, in our, in our own private, issues.
That makes sense.
Three things that we can come together on. Like, obviously now democracy is one. So let's all agree that, we're about making sure this democracy stays in, and then find two others, and then have those three unite us, and then we work on all the other issues that we have in our tent. But we gotta get some basic things that we agree on.
Right. And if y'all can come around that, then just maybe we can get a voting rights bill passed, right?
Maybe.
Well, Congressman, I think you just summed up your first your first meeting. That's what your first district meeting should be. What are the three things we need to organize around? When you do a district meeting, maybe we talk about that when you come to the district, and that's something we can focus on. Have a round table, and then you begin to take it back and let it build momentum, because that's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically.
What's the movie that your family influenced that Eddie Murphy was in?
Oh, I don't know that.
Where he went to act like a congressman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I forget the name of that. Yeah,
he kind of got the idea from my cousin Lisa was a really good friend of his, and in talking to him and this and that, he kind of picked up on that and came up with the idea of being a congressman and having the same name as a congressman and kind of slide into his place, and people not realize the guy was gone. I think the guy died, but he had the same name, so he kept using the name.
It was called The Distinguished Gentleman.
Right. Yeah, that's it.
I think I'm gonna watch that tonight.
It was an excellent movie.
It's pretty funny. Yeah, it's a great concept.
Did y'all get any money? Did the Payne?
No.
Ain't get no rights on that.
No, he just kind of took the idea and ran with it, but you know, it was all good.
Well, look, y'all, we
got to
come
wind up.
to the end of the Payne report, and of course, we want to thank our brother and give him the last word. You know, on the Payne report, if there's anything he want to say, and anybody has any final words, you know.
Well, I wish I had realized that you know, Bonnie Watson Coleman was going to be on. I would have come on with her and
last night.
kicked it. Yeah, I know, but man, look, I don't remember what I did this morning, brother. I got a memory like a sieve, man. You kidding? They got to tell me my schedule like 5 times a day. Where am I supposed to go next? Where am I?
Yeah, it took a minute to pin her down too, but we did finally get her.
You know, but it's all good. She's a great individual, great leader in the state, and I call her she's my sister mama. You know, sometimes she's like my sister, and then other times she's my mama. So depending on how she comes at me, you know, she's my mama or my sister. So she can tighten me up, or she'll get on my case. But she's a great colleague to have, and you know, we work really well together in trying, you know, to move our agenda forward, and so we're going to do a few more things together, you know, in reference to you know, Black issues in the state. So I'm looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Okay. Well, it's been a good week. It's a good session.
Absolutely.
As we wind up, let me just remind everybody that services for Street Doctor are next Thursday, 9 a.m. Viewings at 9 a.m. Funerals at 12 noon at 971 Clinton Avenue, at the big church in Irvington, right? Reverend Pastor Jerry Smith's church, Transcend Worship Center, right? So we sent off our brother, right? He's a good brother. Did a lot. We broke a lot of ground together trying to make peace in the streets. So we got to send our brother off well. And I wanted to shout out again to late Mel Reeves from the Minnesota spokesman reporter who just went out here also. Mel died from COVID. Mel's just a couple years older than me too. So that was a bit of a shock. So yeah, good session, y'all. Good session. Another good Friday.
Yeah. Y'all all stay safe, right?
Yes.
Yep. You too, Congressman.
You
stay
too.
safe.
You too. We're on homeschool instruction again for the next 2 weeks because COVID's just been eating through my students. A lot of my students are coming down with COVID. I get another email every day from a parent. So yeah, everyone stay safe.
Yeah, I've been fortunate, you know, and I haven't gotten it yet. So I'm blessed. I take a little criticism about not being around that much, but you know, I'd rather not be around for events than not be around at all. So you know,
right. So I want to take yet out of your vocabulary. We just gonna receive. You ain't gonna get it, Congressman.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, just that
you're
gonna stay safe. You gonna live long and live strong, my brother.
I appreciate that. That's why I was kind of leery about last night. I'm like, I don't know. I figured
last minute I just made up my mind. I was trying to wait, you know, for the car and all that. So now let me just go.
Yeah, Sue just kept pushing me, and you know that I was, you know, the top. She needed me there. I was the headliner, and I said, how am I gonna be the headliner? You got Raz Baraka. So I made the commitment since she really wanted me to be there, and so I did it. But you know, I was apprehensive the whole time. You saw me stand over in the corner, right?
That's right. And you didn't move either.
Yeah.
Hey guys, when we call that laying in the cut.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. All right. Y'all take care.
All right, everybody.
Thanks, brother.
All right. Great show.